Testing.
Good morning. This is the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session. So we have a master kind of agenda, and then we have several sub-agendas we're going to go through. The first sub-agenda is for November 20th, 2018, which is today. So I'm on what we call the BoCC agenda for Tuesday, November 22, 2018. And today, we'll call the meeting to order at 2 o'clock, and I'll ask Commissioner Hutchings to do the Pledge of Allegiance and make a motion to approve the agenda and board meeting minutes from November 6, 2018. And then, of course, there's any opportunity for the public to address the board. We'll go through that portion of it and the county manager's update. With that in mind, we'll just move right into the item number 3, which is the consent items A through I. And the first one is from the Public Health and Social Services, and it's an approval of the Lot Clean Water Alliance Interlocal Cooperation Agreement.
Yeah, Commissioners, you reviewed this item a couple of weeks ago, and this is an interlocal agreement that has the objective to reduce waste water flow through the implementation of the Water Conservation Coordination Plan. The goal with this agreement is to reduce the wastewater flow by 120,000 gallons per day by 2024. And this program is a continuation of the efforts in reducing the flow that goes into the lot facility. To give you an example, the goal between 2013 and 2018 was a reduction of 175,000 gallons per day, and that was exceeded greatly. So, and again, this is a successful program. This is aligned to initiative number 8 of the Thurston strategic plan. There is not really a financial component to the county, since the county residents do not have sewer connections. All the sewer connections within the urban growth area are provided either by the city of Lacey, Olympia, or Tumwater.
Any comments or questions?
Nope.
No fiscal note?
Nope.
Okay. All righty, we're going to move to item number 2 in the consent item, which is item B, actually. And so that comes from Central Services. It's a resolution for reclassifying a position, IT consultant 2 to IT consultant 3.
Yeah, this is the result of the set of skills required to meet all the different IT requirements in the county have increasing. And this proposal for your consideration is to reclassify an existing position of IT consultant 2 to IT consultant 3, which brings the high level of skills. This particular action increased the salary from $7,834 to $8,289 per month, which is an increase of $455 per month, or 6%. And this will be covered by the IT indirect funds, and there is not an impact on the general fund.
All righty. No impact on the general fund. Okay, so how about for item C, which is also from Central Services, and it's another reclassification. This one is a capital project manager from 1 to a capital project manager number 2.
Yeah, similar to the previous item, Commissioners, this is also in response to the increase and the complexity of the scope of work on all the projects the Central Services is managing. Those projects are mainly related to building improvements and so on and so forth. So this particular proposal reclassifies an existing capital project manager 1 position to a capital projects manager 2 position. The financial impact of this goes from $6,774 to $7,529 a month. That will be about $750 a month increase, or 11%. And this will be covered by the building reserves funds, and it's no impact to the general fund. And no additional budget is requested for this proposal.
All right. That gets us through. Any question or comment?
No.
That gets us through C. We'll go to D, which is from Emergency Services, and this is move to execute FY19 agreement with the U.S. Department of Interior for operation and maintenance for river gauges.
Yeah, this is a continuation with the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, because they allow us to put some gauges to only measure the flow of some of the rivers, particularly the Chutes and the Skookumchuck. This particular ask is from October 1st, 2018 through September 30, 2019. It has a cost of $19,300. You may recall when you review this item, there was a split between general fund coming from CPED and the stormwater funds. Through your request, you requested, I believe, Commissioner Edwards, that perhaps this should be covered entirely by the stormwater funds, stormwater fees, so which that will be the case.
Very good?
Is this for installation of or monitoring of the gauges?
Monitoring.
Monitoring.
Maintenance.
They're already installed. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that covers D. We go to E, which is also with emergency services, and this is approval for corrected intergovernmental emergency medical services contract amendment number 1 from paramedical services. I got my
Yeah, this is
Alrighty.
this is sorry, I'm gonna let Robin to sit down.
Take a second.
A couple months ago, you approved this particular amendment, and through the process, we realized that we had a typographical error. And that typographical error
That's what that
included the word lease, which you don't have a lease in this particular contract. So this corrects that error, and it should read as a EMS contract. That's the only change in this amendment.
Mopping up. Alrighty, moving on to F, back to central services. This is a contract amendment number 8 with Intercity Transit for the continuation of employee volunteer bus ride service and volunteer bus ride service.
Yeah, this is a continuation of this agreement. However, I will recommend for the board to move this item for the November 27th. Last time that you reviewed this item, you asked the question as to why this the $19,795 has increased. And I have not been able to have that opportunity to check with the staff as to what the reasons for the increase are. So I'd recommend for you to move this item until I'll have the opportunity to answer those questions for you.
Comment?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Comment? Time sensitive or
No,
any
because
chance
this-
of not be able to reach the conclusion we're looking for as far as your answer?
I think it is just allowing me some time to get through the process, commissioners. And this agreement goes from January 1st, 2019. So I think we're okay.
Just one more chance after that.
yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay. So we're going to move on to item G here, still in the consent items, and it's coming from the commissioner. This is the appointment of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee.
Is 2 reappointments for your consideration, commissioners. One is for Shauna Stewart, and this is for a 3-year term, which will expire on October 27, 2021. And the other one is for Carrie LaRue for another 3-year term that will expire November 24, 2021. And this is, again, to serve in the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. This particular action is aligned with the initiative number 6 of the strategic plan.
Good.
Good.
Well, I am with Carrie, with Shauna, but I don't know Carrie.
Who's Carrie
You know
LaRue?
Carrie LaRue?
Do you know?
Well, we're not having the door knocked down by applicants. And
Or pro and con?
she's put in, and
And it's a reappointment.
it's a reappointment.
Carrie is too?
Yeah.
That's
Both
fine,
are
okay.
both are reappointments.
Then fine, yeah,
Oh, I
fine.
know.
Go ahead. Robin.
Yeah, she is one of the representatives of the people who would collect the funds, which is a requirement in the law for the LTAC committee. You have to have 2 people who would collect the tax and then 2 people who might receive the tax. And we have a very limited number of businesses that actually collect that tax. And from what I can tell, she's doing a good job. She shows up and participates.
Now that it's a reappointment, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, now that we've cleared through G, we'll go to H. H is the Community Planning and Economic Development. This is the approval of a contract amendment number 2 with Herrera Environmental Consultants Incorporation for the Nisqually Sub-Area Plan Asphalt Recycling Policy Review Project.
Yeah, that's part of your, the comp plan. As you may recall, this was a citizen initiative, and back in August 2017, you authorized a contract with Herrera, to provide technical services to achieve the objective of looking at the recycled asphalt processing plant in this particular area. So right now they have completed the initial task, which is the literature review and research. Now is the next step for an additional $15,793 for a total cost of $48,203. This particular contract is funded by Lakeside Industries and is not funded by the general fund since
Oh,
this is initiated by
Right.
Citizen,
Citizen. So it's not general fund.
not general fund.
Okay. Any comments, quick? No, this is good. This is how it's supposed to have been.
Yep,
So-
that's how it's supposed to work,
Yep,
Commissioners.
okay, good. I is the auditor's financial services, and it's posted on the web, so we'll move on to department items. And the first department item, which is item number 4, is from the Public Health and Social Services. So 4A is a contract with the City of Olympia to conduct a point-in-time homeless count.
Yes, the next point in time homeless count is scheduled for January 24, 2018, and I believe you, all 3 of you participated on the 2018 count. So this is to support the effort, and this is with a contract with City of Olympia for $25,000. And I believe you had a conversations as to what type of questions could be included, could not be included. And I hope your questions were answered at that
No.
time, but
No.
No. Received no follow-up as to what the questions are or what they could be.
so the questions they would have is provided by HUD.
Right.
So really it's prescribed questions.
Right.
So,
And Olympia comes up with their own.
And Olympia, if the Olympia comes on their own, there may be an opportunity to add any questions. But really, there is not a possibility for the county to change the questions the HUD is asking. So would you like to see the specific questions, or what else?
Well, I think you mentioned that last time. We wanted to see the questions. And even, I think perhaps even a discussion with Olympia as to adding a question or two. But I'm okay with the HUD stuff, but it's
Okay.
being supplemented by Olympia, and I just wanted to see what Olympia was adding and how they were defining, if they were changing
Okay,
definitions or adding
so would you
questions.
like to move this item to next week?
Well, I don't want to do that if it's a time crunch.
Just for clarity, there is no county money going to the Olympian portion of the.
Well, I understand.
Okay, sure.
I just want accurate information and data being collected coming in so we know what to address in the future down the road.
Okay.
I very much want to have a question on there, and I don't know why we can't ask. When we talk with folks, why can't we ask them, where did you spend, where were you last year at this point in time in your life?
So because the
It's a pretty
prescri-
simple
yeah,
question.
No, I don't disagree. This is a pretty simple question, Commissioner. But the reasoning behind why HUD has those specific questions, they go into a database, and they analyze the data, not just here in Thurston County, across the state, across the nation. So the data has to be consistent. So that's why we cannot add any questions to the HUD questionnaire. Perhaps there is an opportunity to add in questions with the Olympia questionnaire. And that is the reason why we cannot add questions to the HUD questionnaire.
And I
It's
understand
how the data
that,
comes.
but this is regarding a contract with the City of Olympia to conduct the point in time. And I just wanted to see their questions, and I haven't seen their questions.
So the question that I asked, Commissioner, is if you want to hold this item until you get the questions in
Yeah,
front of
and
you.
is there a time deadline?
Well, January 24, 2018 is when the count occurs.
I'm sorry.
And we have a couple of,
Yeah.
I think we only have 2 board meetings before the end of the year.
Okay, so we have time.
Okay?
Right.
And the 25,000 goes to where? You said it didn't come, it
It
didn't
goes
go
to
to
the
the
City
city.
of Olympia to conduct the HUD questioning portion
Yeah.
of the PIT, not
The HUD portion of it, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then I'm fine.
And my question is, the money comes from where? Out of what portion of our budget?
That's from the homeless fund,
Okay.
public
I'm
health.
okay with that now then.
Yeah, it's not a general fund by no means whatsoever. If that's the portion you're asking, if you want to know more specific, I can't remember which one. Is it Gary? Where's Gary?
Highly likely it's the whole grant.
Mm,
It's carried
It's
in.
2163 or something like that.
So would you like to hold this item, move forward? That's the question that I have for you, Commissioners.
Well,
Homeless Housing Fund,
Yeah,
Gary
that's what I
Aiden, Public Health.
which one? Okay, let's try it again. Who are you?
Gary Aiden, Public Health,
And where does the money come from?
Homeless Housing Fund,
Okay, good.
2163.
2163, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's the bill name way back when.
And it goes to fund Olympia's point in time
The
distribution of
county's-
the HUD.
The county's point in time count.
Right.
Our data goes to
Okay, all right,
the state, and then the state compiles that, and gives that to HUD.
okay. And Olympia's just separate,
That is correct.
okay.
Olympia does a separate count.
Sometimes simultaneously, though, when the HUD
Yeah.
is going on. Sometimes not so simultaneous. You know,
Maybe Gary could explain to me why we can't ask a question as simple as,
on
where
the,
were you last year?
on the HUD or
at this
non-HUD?
time?
On the HUD or
Well,
non-HUD?
I don't really care. I just want that as part of the facts.
Well, it does mean something for those that beyond this door, because we're trying to honor your question, but it doesn't line up with the formatted program that's already established. I've just been there 4 times, I already know, so I want to get your question.
Through HUD.
HUD, you want to try it through HUD? Because it'd be the,
I'm willing to try it wherever we
okay.
can get
So
an
now
honest
so
answer.
now answer the question.
Where you were a
I-
year ago
I-
at this time, and possibly, were you homeless a year ago?
Sure, I'll be happy to ask Olympia to add that to their set of questions.
Most likely they will.
Would that
But
be
we
helpful?
can't, when we go to Rochester to ask people that are homeless, we can't ask them that question?
Sure.
You could ask them, sure, you could ask those questions, they just wouldn't be included in what we submit back to HUD.
Then that would be fine with me. I'm just
Okay.
curious, so we can tell our citizens where the problem is coming from and how best to address that issue.
The migratory the nomadic portion of it?
Yes.
Mhm, sure. Okay. That's a tasking bill. I don't know if you got that.
Thank you.
We'll work on it. But go forward or hold?
Yeah.
Go forward or hold?
I'm ready to go forward.
With this right here, this particular action.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
There you go.
But I
But
still
there-
would like to know.
There's some caveats,
But
so.
I'd like to see some questions that Commissioner Hutchins mentioned.
So
Yeah.
Gary, could you provide the questions to HUD?
The HUD questions.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to 4B is the approval of interlocal agreements with the cities of Lacey and Tumwater for specialized recreation services. And
Yeah,
this is
Commissioner,
before-
this is an agreement with the 2 cities, as you explained, and the duration is from January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2020. In the city of Lacey, the contract amount is for $8,377, and the city of Tumwater contract is for $2,125. And those are the city's contribution to the programs the county manages to provide those services.
Any questions, comment?
No?
All right, we're good to go with that, and 4B is good. So we'll go to 5, which is a department item from Central Services, and 5 is the approval of the use of Municipal Resource Services Center, otherwise known as MRCS, shared rosters program, and can discontinue the use of existing Public Works, Central Services, and vendor rosters.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
here in the county, we have maintained a couple of vendor rosters just to do small works projects. And this particular item, it consolidates all that into the MRSC shared roster program, which is give us a little more flexibility and also more options as to how we can probably contract services for small works, which is under $5,000. And the county used to belong to the MRSC years ago, and it was probably 4 years ago that the membership, as I looked at it, it was a little bit too binding, as they stated. So that's the reason why we didn't continue with the membership. Since they have changed the language on the agreement, and I think it's a little more flexible in order for us to consider getting this membership.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go with number 5, And number 6 is the county managers and commissioner managers items. Okay, it's good, we're clear on that. And then we have the transportation benefit district, but before we do that, at 5 o'clock today, we have a public hearing. And the public hearing is for the approval of a system of rates and charges for the Thurston Conservation District.
That is correct.
5 o'clock today.
5 o'clock, so
Alrighty.
we should be expecting significant public testimony this afternoon.
You suppose?
What?
You suppose?
Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm turning it over to Commissioner Hutchings to conduct the portion of the next item on the master agenda is the Transportation Benefit District, and I'll give it to him.
As close to 3:30, we will call the meeting to order, approve the November 20th, 18 agenda and the meeting minutes from October 16th, and we'll move right into the opportunity for the public to address the board. Do you anticipate anybody will be here to address the board on the TBD?
I've not heard, no.
Okay. Romero, nothing? You've heard nothing? I've heard nothing. Okay, then we'll move into the department items, and the first one, 3A, is committee survey overview and results. And welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. The first item, Scott Lindblom will give you feedback on the outreach that we did and the survey results. We worked with a consulting firm to go out and ask a series of questions regarding funding a transportation benefit district and also priorities around the transportation system. And so this will be an opportunity to share with you what our citizens had to say about that.
Is there any eye-opener or smoking gun or smoking tailpipe, anything that's going to shock us?
What I would say is that our citizens have been very consistent with valuing transportation, and so we got very similar results that we got out of the county strategic plan when we asked questions around transportation and funding.
Okay. Questions or comments on that?
No, good.
Okay.
No, looking
We'll
forward to
move
it.
on to 3B, and 3B is, again, Public Works. Your report.
My report, yes. So
Yeah.
this will be answering the question for your consideration of why you might consider funding a transportation benefit district.
Consider.
Okay, I wrote that down. Any questions or comments?
I guess if we were going to consider funding a transportation district, would we also would we consider whether it's necessary to even have the transportation benefit district?
That's always up for your consideration.
Okay, so a couple of topics could be discussed then.
Have or have not.
Okay.
A good question. And then
Just to
3.
clarify, though, be clear, I came prepared to talk about why we might fund, but I can certainly flex as to why we would maybe not consider having transportation benefit.
That might be like Plan C or something. Moving on to 3D, or 3C, Charlie. Again, it's Public Works. Set a public hearing to take public comment on the levying of a $20 annual vehicle license fee with an unincorporated Thurston County to fund certain transportation improvement projects. So, yeah, C is coming after B, which makes sense.
Yes.
And what do you have on that? Anything beyond what I just said?
No, asking you for your consideration. So based off of the information that you receive out of the feedback from the citizens, from my report, and then just overall what we've talked about during budget and where we are in terms of keeping up with our transportation needs.
Okay, and
we would just ask for your consideration.
And this is just to set a public hearing for December 18,
Correct.
2018 at 5:30 here.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead, Gary.
To your knowledge, have there been any other counties in the state of Washington that have went through this process and enacted a funding source through the transfer?
They have not enacted a funding source yet. They have. There are a handful of counties that have transportation benefit districts that exist.
Similar to what we're doing.
Correct.
Romero?
And commissioners, you just make sure that you understand the options that you have before you. Let me walk you through in terms of the revenue public hearing that is scheduled for November 29th, which includes a portion of draft revenue component of the transportation benefit district. and the potential dollar amount they could generate a $20 car tab fee. But in order for the Transportation Benefit District, you as a board, to seriously consider a $20 car tab fee, you need to have a separate public hearing, and that is required. So you may hear those two public hearings. I just want to make sure that it's separated. One is related to revenues of the budget itself, and this is a particular action that you may consider taking public testimony for the $20 car tab fee. You're not bound to go with a public hearing. You can certainly this afternoon decline and not move forward, and that's it. Or if you're considering, then you can set the public hearing for December 18 as requested. So those are the options that you have this afternoon. So please don't feel that you have to set a public hearing.
Okay.
Because you do have the option to say no.
Okay, and that, you said that was November 29?
Yes, in the morning.
I see, okay, that's the one, revenue sources. Okay, thank you.
But that's on the overall budget revenue.
And the public hearing in the afternoon on the 29th
Is not a public hearing, it's a follow-up to the public hearing you had in the
follow-up.
morning. So, because you need to take an action before the end of the month on establishing the revenues for the budget.
Okay, so that was, in the afternoon's a follow-up to the morning,
Yes, sir.
depending on if we had, okay, got it, thank you. Anything further on that issue? Then we're looking at item number 4, and that's the adjournment, yay.
We can do that.
And about 4:30 PM, okay.
Because at 5, we have a,
What?
at 5, we have a public hearing.
And at 5, we have a public hearing, that comes back to you.
Alrighty, so just for everybody tracking along, I'm on the Board of County Commissioners agenda for November 27th. And as prescribed, call the meeting to order at 2 o'clock. Ask Commissioner Evers to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, go through the agenda and board meeting minutes of November 20th, 2018. We do have one presentation. It's the proclamation for December 1st World AIDS Day. And so with that, I know Luke, I forget his last name, will be here to receive it.
Yeah.
And so,
We'll find out who can
yeah,
come
we'll
and
package
receive
it up as we go along. But I know there's about 4 or 5 that came last year, so it'd be great to be
Well,
able to.
yeah, and we'll organize that
And
leading
I
to the
know-
presentation,
And I
proclamation.
know Public Health and Social Services is involved a little bit on this too, so not much, but some.
And the proclamation has been circulated for your review before
Okay.
signature. So.
Any comments on that? No? Okay, so it's been coordinated at least. We just need to do some final adjustments to it. Next, we have the opportunity for the public to address the board. And I don't know if there's too far out for that, but we'll move on to item number 2. So it's County Manager's update.
If there is a specific item as a result of the public testimony this afternoon, I will follow up next week.
Sure. Then we have consent items for November 27th, A and B, just 2 of them so far. One of them is from the Human Resources Department. It's a resolution reclassifying a position in the Thurston County Deputy Sheriff's Association Administration Support Staff.
The Sheriff's Office has been working for quite some time with Human Resources to look at their financial group. And this particular request is the result of that effort, which reclassifies the existing financial operations supervisor to an accounting manager in the sheriff's administrative side of the business. This particular action includes increasing the salary from $5,538 to $7,068 for an increase of about $1,530 a month. And they're planning to cover that on their current budget.
Actually, I had a conversation yesterday morning with the sheriff. They're concerned about covering this additional cost and asked if it could be added to the budget for next year. And
We haven't even done that budget yet. Yeah.
That's right. So there is a little room should the board want to add this a little bit of time. And I would just advocate for this reclassification. They have been unable to attract qualified candidates for the current position. And they need to be able to attract someone good for the management of the finances of that, both law enforcement and corrections. So I do believe they need this, and they're concerned about the ability to absorb.
What is the budget impact? What
It would be about $12,000 that they would need in their budget next year.
For the year? So 24 for the biennium.
Right.
So things have changed since they submitted the justification, because the justification stated they will cover. But thank you for following up, Robin.
Wow, and others are looking for money too. Okay.
Where are you at on this? Because I'm a
Well, I'd like to
I'm a
hear-
wait and see.
I would like to hear a little more about why Robin is advocating for this. Not that I disagree with you at all.
For the position?
Yeah, for doing this.
The financial piece of it.
What's the overall benefit going to be to the sheriff's office and thus the public?
Well, they've been, for this particular position, they've been unable to attract qualified candidates, and they think by being able to offer a little more money, what they're not finding is someone with the appropriate education and experience background to manage finances. They need a manager. They've got good technicians in place right now, but they're lower level and don't necessarily have the educational background you need for accounting. That's a critical piece for an accountant. And the candidates they're having for the position are not, they're really not as qualified as we need. So the benefit is appropriate management of the money. And by that, when our money is managed well county-wide, that means that we're more efficient in its use, meaning that we don't necessarily need as much to run our operations, and there's more available for additional services.
Is this a position to help Heidi out? Is that kind of
Yes,
where this
that's
is gonna
exactly
take
what
place?
this is. This is within Heidi's office.
Okay.
My question is, typically when there's an issue, just throw more money at it. And so, I don't know if we have a class study or pay and class study for that position or not. Is that what we're offering, what the sheriff's offering, is that right on par with what the national or even local draw is, or do we need to up that?
Well, that's not a question I can answer, but I can
understand.
tell you that countywide, we have been experiencing difficulty in attracting qualified financial candidates. This particular position has been open for, I think, 6 months. Heidi worked very closely with HR. She's advertised, when we talked about it yesterday morning, she talked about advertising in all the places that I normally would advertise in, nationally and locally, including using personal contacts that many of the finance people in the county have to get it out broadly. And we're still not pulling the kind of candidates that we really need. So
That has something to say with the economy, with a lot of people back to work as
that
well.
very possibly
Yeah.
does, and I recently read an article that the finance is one of the fastest growing sectors of government. Financial people, who they're looking for the most, so we possibly have a lot of competition. Now, whether or not we need a pay and class study, that would be a question for HR.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And you've had conversations, I take it, with the HR director, and I don't see her in the audience, but she's advocating it as well, would you say?
I have not talked to her recently about this particular position, but I have talked to Lauren Spurgeon about it, and we agree that it's a necessary upgrade.
I would just as soon move forward, whatever it takes to get it, to make this happen. Just, if it's a need, I know retention and
12K? 24K?
if that's what it takes to make it happen, I'm not thrilled about it, but I don't see that we have an alternative following the guidance that Robin has laid out. I think there's merit to it. We need to do it.
Your Hutch?
Yep,
All
on
right.
there.
So just to, the impact that I mentioned to you on a monthly basis is just the top range of the position.
Yeah, they won't come in at that top
So
range, but yeah.
eventually, that person who comes in will get to that point, but not necessarily in the upcoming year.
Right.
It's, initially, this is gonna affect us, but it's not gonna affect us immediately, more than likely.
I think the immediate pay will be higher than we would have at the current class.
Right.
Not all the
Yes,
way
yeah.
to the top of the
No,
range.
no, all the
Right.
way.
Which
No.
is why I'm saying that, you know, about $1,000 a month rather than the 1,500 a month that you see in the
Okay.
top.
And the immediate impact is we have an employee.
Well, yeah, who we badly need.
Yeah, okay, I'm good.
All right, got set A out of the way. Let's go to B. And that's the auditor's financial services, which is listed on the website. With that in mind, I'll go to department items. And item number 4 comes from the Community Planning and Economic Development. And so 4 is the resolution extending Resolution 15589, which is the amended land use and permitting fee schedule and establish the other procedures as mandated in state law regarding wells for domestic use. We need to clean that up just a tad, but that's okay.
Yeah, so let me give you the background on this, Commissioners. Back in early in the year, the Washington State Legislature came up with what we call the Hearst Fix. And within the Hearst Fix, it was a series of WIRAs that we needed to work with. In the county are 5, and each of the WIRAs had a different gallons per minute consumption that each of the exempt wells could be approved. So within the context, we need to be part of this, developing each WIRA a mitigation plan. And again, without getting into much of the details of the WIRAs, each WIRA has a specific deadline as to when that implementation plan needs to be put in place before the Department of Ecology can come up with their own plan. Within the whole context, the local jurisdictions, require the local jurisdictions to implement a $500 fee for every single exempt well application. Out of the $500 fee, $350 needs to be set aside to give to the Department of Ecology to implement some of the mitigation projects that may be coming out of the individual WIRAs. And the remainder, $150, is remaining for the county staff to go through the process and process the requirement. Because one of the biggest requirements is that I spoke that every single WIRA has a limit on the gallons per day they can consumption. That limit needs to be recorded on the specific property, and that is what is intended on the $150. You heard from the staff that perhaps the $150 has covered that initial cost of recording the usage on the specific properties, but the $150 does not include the participation that the staff is going through on the different WIRAs, and that's taken a lot of time. So this particular action is for you to remove the end date, which is December 31st, 2018, of this particular fee, and extend it until the board has another opportunity to take an action. That was a mouthful.
Mm-hmm. And I think I would highlight the mandated in state law. So we're kind of stuck.
It is mandated. Thank you.
It's mandated.
Oh, yeah.
You would like to add on the action, that word, Commissioner?
Yes.
Is that what you?
That's one of my items to clean up.
Okay.
And then,
Just a comment.
Extending the, okay, we'll clean it up.
let me take it for a second. So the whole description, I was hoping to clean that up a little bit. It's not bad. I just and then add the mandated piece in the action portion of it. So.
Yeah, we'll-
Scratch off D on established or something like that.
Oh, well, it's just a little wordy, that's all.
Okay, we'll clean that up for next week.
Sure, okay.
This Hearst Fix, number one, are they readdressing it in any way this next session? Do we know?
I I think at this point, this is just my personal perspective. I think they're waiting until all the different WIRAs, they can come up with their own implementation plan. The Nisqually WIRA needs to come up with implementation plan as early as in the next couple months in 2019. And the staff is going to come back to you to give you additional specific briefing as to what that really is. And the other WIRAs have a different deadline. I think one is 2021, I believe. So it's a little, and I have no idea, and I don't think staff knows either, as to how the limits per WIRA was put in place and how those deadlines were put in place as part of the law. So,
Well, the Hearst fix might feel good for the state, but not so much for the counties. And I liken that to, I feel good that I got my dog fixed, but he's not happy about it. But I guess as long as we have mandate in there, I'll be okay with it.
Mandated.
we'll clean it up
Yep.
for next week. Thank you.
When I
And
say
this
clean
is-
up, just kind of make it more formal, I
Yeah.
guess, in the
Yep.
description.
We'll work on it.
The site. Good, okay, sure.
And this is aligned with initiative number 7 of the strategic plan.
Oh, number 7. Okay, staying with the department items, item number 5 comes from the Public Health and Social Services, is 5A, which is the approve of Nurse Family Partnership Implementation Agreement. And what
Yeah,
is this
this
about?
this particular request is to implement the Nurse Partnership program. And just to give, I know that you understand fully what this program does for the public's benefit. This program helps low-income, first-time mothers and to have healthier pregnancies, be better parents, have emotionally and physically healthier children, and attain greater economic self-sufficiency. In this particular agreement, goes from the period of February 1st, 2018 through January 31st, 2021. Although reviewing that information, I did not find a dollar amount on the contract, so I will ask staff to provide that before you take an action next Tuesday.
Questions, comments?
I would just say without delay.
Oh,
Yeah, I would like to compliment Gretchen on her hard work and what she does every day to help our kids, our future.
Yep.
So Gretchen, on the motion, we need to add the dollar amount. Thank you.
Gretchen et al., we appreciate
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. And I have a picky question. The implementation agreement, with whom are we implementing? Can you come forward and give a little bit of background so they understand the agreement portion of that?
Long time no see.
Yes, good to see you again. Gretchen Toller, Public Health Social Services, Nurse Family Partnership. So the implementation agreement is with our National Service Office.
Oh, okay.
So it allows us to be an NFP site and allows us to enter data into the national system and have their support and outcomes provided and things like that.
Oh, pretty easy. I thought
So-
it was something more local, but it's back with Colorado and those guys, right?
Yes.
Okay, sure. And is there a dollar amount associated with this? You don't have to name it right now, but if there's a clause in there for a dollar amount more than 25%, whatever, we got to clean that up.
So the dollar amount that should be included is the amount that we pay to the National Service Office with this contract. So the fees have changed, so I don't know. what
Get
it
back
is
with-
You can come back with
Yeah,
that
get back around
before
that.
Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. And this is aligned with initiative number 1 of the strategic plan.
Number 1. Okay, 5B, approval of the Cascade Pacific Action Alliance contract number K2293-47 for the Medicaid Transformation Project.
Yes, back in July 2018, the Public Health Social Services submitted a proposal as a result of the request for proposals to access Medicaid transformation dollars. And this is overseen by the Cascade Pacific Action Alliance, the CPAA. As a result of that process, they were awarded $136,280. And this particular project will concentrate in 3 areas: the chronic disease prevention, control opioid response, in the reproductive and maternal child health. Considering this is the Cascade Pacific Action Alliance includes close to, I believe, 7 counties that will provide in the services, and Thurston County is the lead. And that includes let me read the counties included on this.
Which counties? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Oh, I know 'em.
Chris,
Is Chris here?
Chris,
Chris knows, yeah.
Pacific, Grace Harbor.
Pacific, Wahkiakum,
Correct.
Yeah.
So the
Like
Cascade
two.
Pacific Action Alliance region is a 7-county region that includes Thurston, but also Lewis, Mason, Cowlitz, Wahkiakum, and Pacific counties. Grace Harbor
Grace Harbor, yeah.
yeah,
is the
you
last.
got it.
And so this particular set of activities is primarily serving Thurston County residents. This contract would be for the services that we provide in this county for chronic disease self-management workshops, an opioid response effort, which would build on our existing syringe exchange program, and expansion of nurse-family partnerships. So there would be some services outside of Thurston County in a couple of those projects, primarily nurse-family partnership, as that continues to serve a multi-county area. But this is primarily the services we would provide under Medicaid transformation to residents of Thurston County.
Okay.
And it's just the start. It's
Sure.
the initial
So can you
amount.
repeat them? It's chronic disease, opioid, maternal child and health, and is there another one?
Just those 3.
Three? Okay, sure.
Good.
thank you, Chris.
Thank you,
You're
Chris.
very welcome. Thank you.
So that's 5B, and we're going to move to 5C, which is to make a motion to approve regional tobacco and vaping prevention and regional contracts. That's Chris again.
And they're similar to, related to the Cascade Pacific Action Alliance, and this is to provide the tobacco and vapor product prevention program to the Cowlitz, Lewis, Mason, Pacific, Wahkiakum, and Thurston counties. The county was awarded $125,500 for year 2 on 2019, fiscal year 2019. And again, each contract will have just about a $10,000 contract with each of the counties. And again, the objective is to address the tobacco and vapor product prevention program. And Chris is here again to answer any questions if you may.
You have any questions?
I really don't, other than to say thanks for watching out for those kids.
Are we on C? Did you see how long that thing is? It's a whole paragraph in a sentence.
I apologize for that.
They may have, yeah, I wouldn't know. Okay, no, I have no questions. Thank you, Chris.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. All righty, moving on to item number 6 for the department items. This is the approve the ordinance relating to the Thurston Conservation District system rates and charges for the Thurston Conservation District.
Yeah, this is a placeholder item, Commissioners. You will receive public testimony this afternoon, and you will convene tomorrow morning to discuss the public testimony you have received on the proposed Thurston Conservation District rates and charges. The proposal it goes for a collection of 5 years from 2019 and 2023. And again, this is a placeholder. After you hear public testimony this afternoon, tomorrow I'm hoping you provide a direction as to how you'd like to move forward on this. And there's a couple of decision points that you may consider when you discuss this tomorrow. One is whether you like to approve the proposal rates and charges, and for the period of time, whether it's 5 years or something less or something more. Just to like to cross the some of the questions that you may have in terms of whether you had the ability as a board to change some of the rates and charges. You do. However, the forest land item or the rates and charges, that is specifically outlined in the law. There's not going to be able for you to change that. And I will provide the RCW for you prior to the meeting this afternoon, because it's very prescriptive as to how that forest land rates and charges have to be applied. It has to be in relation to the rest of the county. So I checked with your legal counsel, and she agrees with that approach. And again, I will give you an RCW that states that today, so you are armed with that information leading to the public hearing this afternoon.
I want to be sure I understood you, that if we establish a rate, it's not so easy to change, or we can't change it?
Is the one that is, I believe, the previous conversation was the rate specifically related to forest land, timber and forest land.
Okay, okay. No, the per acre.
And that is specifically prescribed in a specific RCW that will be giving you a copy after this
Okay,
meeting.
and that's the per acre piece. Okay, got that. But we can change the rate and/or the duration of the contract, or the duration of the collection.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify something there. I don't think we can change the duration of the contract,
Of the collection.
of the collection, but we cannot change the rate that we're collecting from the corporate entities, I guess, of the timber industry.
No, and I wanted to make sure that we went through I know that was a question asked in the past, a couple of weeks ago. I just want to make sure that in fact you had the ability to do so. And in conversations with your legal counsel, we came up with this RCW that is very prescriptive.
So we can change the rate for the citizens that we assess against, but not against the corporate entities?
Well, the RCW in general terms, they only can be implemented on the forest lands and forest practices is 1/10 of the average collection of the rates and charges. So it's a 1/10 of in relation to the other properties, and that's what the prescription is. So that is what it is. I mean, whether you can adjust the other rates, I believe you could, but the forest lands has to be abide by this specific RCW.
Okay.
Boy, don't that beat all. Okay.
And we just came up with that information yesterday.
Wow.
And again, this is just a placeholder.
Placeholder.
And that can be modified, deleted, or however you decide to move forward after public hearing today. And would you like to address the VSP?
Yeah, sure, I was gonna bring that up either now or at the thing. Do you have any information now?
Yes.
Go ahead.
And I believe you'd like to see how the volunteer stewardship partnership can be covered under this particular rates and charges. I have worked with your
What's a
legal...
level of a guarantee or
Yeah.
a surety, right?
Yeah. So I have worked with your legal counsel, and I cannot provide changes to the ordinance because the ordinance went out as a public hearing. However, I will bring for your consideration an amendment tomorrow morning, including a section that specifically addresses funding for the VSP.
Okay.
And that will be binding because it's part of your ordinance.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Is that all right? To fund VSP?
And
Well, I want to I want VSP
no,
to
and
succeed.
again, please don't discuss that right now because
No, no.
that is not, it is just informational.
Right. It's a title.
So, and again, heads up, tomorrow we'll bring a proposed amendment for your consideration.
Okay.
You cannot amend the ordinance at this point because that is the premise of the public hearing.
Right.
I will take that into consideration.
Okay. Thank you very much. So that gets us through 6. And then on the 27th of November at 3 o'clock, it says here we have a public hearing.
We have 5 public hearings.
Oh, that's right. That's the
Yeah.
It's a big day.
big 5.
So at 3 o'clock, as soon as the item may be heard, you will begin as the Board of Health. Well, you will take public testimony on the proposal to increase the septic fees. And again, that is also included on the revenue aspect of the budget. But you need to hold a specific public hearing for the specific item as you consider moving forward on this. The next public hearing, this is related to changing the Thurston County Code 2.101 to give the county treasurer the authority to manage and dispose tax title properties only. The next public hearing, I'm sorry, do you have any questions?
Go ahead, the sheriff's office.
The next public hearing, will you receive public testimony to amend chapters of the code 12.04 and 12.61. This is related to the traffic code where you consider allowing all-terrain vehicles on portions of county roads that are posted 35 miles an hour or less. And finally, the fifth public hearing, you will be receiving public testimony on the Housing and Urban Development 2017 Consolidated Annual Plan and Evaluation Report.
Comments on the public hearing, Finanzi.
So I'd like to close the loop with you, commissioners, in terms of the last time you reviewed this public hearings, you had 2 additional public hearings, one related to the revenue of the budget that is being scheduled for Thursday, November 27 at 9 in the morning. And then you will, is another portion in the afternoon where you take an action on that, depending on the public testimony you may receive. And the other public hearing was scheduled for the 27th was the 4th quarter budget amendment. That has been rescheduled for December 4th as part of the overall public hearings for the 2019-2020 budget.
Any comments or questions? Public hearing day, make it known to Thurston County, make a resolution.
Part of the business.
Public hearing celebration. Okay. Well, that gets us through the Board of County Commissioners agenda for Tuesday, November 27th, as we discussed. I'll look around and see if there are any comments or questions. Hearing none, it is 9:57. Consider it 10 o'clock and come back at 10:10. We're going to take a break for 13 minutes.
ready? Okay. Okay, welcome back to the Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for 26 November 2018. We're about a quarter way down the agenda, midway, and we're going to move forward to the legislative update portion and then come back to the briefing of the public hearing and decisions pending. So with that in mind, the legislative update, I'll turn it over to the county manager to give a little framework, introduce our advocate.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Commissioners. Every year, the Board of County Commissioners approve legislative priorities as to how we can influence the upcoming legislature in items that perhaps pertains specifically to the county. So you have been involved in a series of conversations, and we're getting to the point of walking you through what the legislative priorities are, and leading to the December 11 legislative breakfast, we will have the opportunity to sit down with the representatives from the region to the legislature and start presenting this the legislative agenda. The county has secured the services of Deborah Manguia, which is present today, as well as Jennifer Ziegler, and they both have been an advocate as to how we present the legislative priorities to the legislature. And from my perspective, they have been extremely effective in the last couple of years when we have secured their services. And Deborah is here to provide some perspective, and as well as Megan walk you through the different items included on this legislative priority.
Hello, Deborah.
Good morning.
We're on this page right here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And just for the audience, if anyone has it in their packet, there is an updated one. So these are the updated ones if you're interested.
In your left hand?
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the big agenda items for the county will be to restore the judicial impact fee funding that was cut from the current biennial budget. Is this on? Okay. And so, as you will remember, the legislature has been appropriating to the Administrative Office of the Courts $1.6 million a biennium that has passed straight through to the county for the cost that the county has because of the state impact cases. And so the legislature cut that in half for the current biennium. So they fully funded the first fiscal year, but there's no funding for the current fiscal year, which ends June 30th of 2019. And the legislature said that in order to consider restoring that money, that the county had to work with the AOC to come up with an updated time study. And so the county spent 1 year, July 1st through August 31st of this year, going through and doing a really detailed study, both the court's office and the clerk's office, on what it costs on the state impact cases. And so we have got that information. It's been compiled. We've been working with the AOC. We've been having meetings with legislators and legislative staff and the governor's office, talking with them about our findings on this. And the initial feedback that we're getting is this is exactly what we've been asking for. And I really, really have to compliment your staff. They have done a tremendous amount of work, and they have really spent a lot of time putting this together in a way that, because it's very complicated, that's understandable for people. And we've gotten full support of the AOC. They have, in their decision packages that they put forward through the courts that go to the governor, they have asked for reimbursement of not the $811,000 that was cut, but the actual costs. So the total amount for the biennium is almost $2.2 million. And so they've asked for, in the supplemental, the full amount for the current fiscal year, and then for next biennium, the full amount. And there's a lot of background on this, and the numbers are conservative, and people think they understand that. The legislators that we've talked with have said, we expected that if you went and did this, that the numbers were probably going to come back saying that it costs more than we thought it would, and it does. And so at this point in time, the feedback that we've gotten has been very positive. So we're going to keep that momentum into the session.
Good.
Okay.
Walking us through the rest of the items, Megan?
So the next one is the reimbursement of extraordinary criminal justice costs. Robin and I were having a sidebar conversation, and I'll let Robin
So
speak to it.
I'll jump in here.
Especially the word extraordinary.
Yes, so this is a request that the county puts in. Counties are allowed to put in a request to the legislature for extraordinary costs associated with death penalty cases. Last year, the costs were nearly $500,000, and the legislature not only did not fund our county, but did not fund any counties that requested this reimbursement. This year, we have an additional approximately $200,000 in expenses. And the conversation we've been having with Deborah and Jennifer is that perhaps what we'll do is attempt to request both last year's expenses and this year's expenses. I would say that the likelihood of getting either of those amounts is extremely low. And jump in here if you think any differently, but I think that there's almost no way we're going to get this money. And what I would propose is that we go ahead and apply for it as we plan, but that this would not be on our legislative priority list. Because I wouldn't want to detract from something that we could actually achieve by having something that there's almost no way to get. So I would like your perspective on that as well.
So I contacted the staff person in the agency that manages these requests, and I had a conversation with him about this. And I asked him if a county, because I went back and I looked at the history of the counties that have been reimbursed for this, and it hasn't happened in the last couple of years. I'm not exactly sure why, but there was something where a county applied for the money, and it's for aggravated murder cases, death penalty cases, and apparently that county submitted something and it wasn't that, and then they had to pay it back. And so I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but I talked with the staff person, and I asked him if counties had come back when they hadn't been funded in the last budget, and he said he's never seen that happen. But I mean, I can guarantee you that if we don't ask for it, we won't get it. But I do agree with Robin that you have to be really careful about what your high priorities are, and the judicial impact fee funding is $2.2 million. And if you have competing requests and they can give you the lower one, then you feel like you still got something. So I agree with Robin. I think that we want to keep the impact fee funding, the court impact fee funding, as the top priority, but still continue to pursue the other one.
Yeah, just not necessarily on this page.
A comment or question, I guess two questions. Number one, as you stated, Robin, reimbursement for extraordinary criminal cases, you said for death penalty cases, and since the governor said we're not a death penalty state anymore.
Yeah.
Is that what's driving the boat? No, we're not going to refund, or does it actually say that death penalty case in
No.
the RCW?
Well, it is, the RCW does specifically say aggravated murder.
Okay,
but
it doesn't say death penalty, just aggravated murder.
No, but that's what
That's what-
I know
anyone
that's
who's
what they
been
mean, right.
reimbursed is,
Okay.
had death penalty on the table. If you don't, you're not gonna run up these kind of costs.
Right.
But I just, the lack of funding, if you will, by the legislature came before that court case. And
Okay.
we'll never see these costs again in the future because there won't be any more cases like that. But I just think that the likelihood of getting funded, especially if we go in and ask for something that no one has ever asked for before, is just extremely low. And I don't want to take any attention away from what our most important item is.
And I agree with that it's not likely to be funded, but I almost I disagree with the tactic of removing it, hoping that it doesn't detract from the restoration of impact fees. From the perspective that, wow, I want this, the county, we want this and this, and it would be easy for the legislature, well, we'll give you this, we're not giving you this though. We never have, we're not gonna, okay, it's a throwaway. Rather than, they're asking for this too, we're not gonna give them anything. Or we're gonna minimize this because they're asking for two. I don't see that happening as punitive.
So in my experience, and again, I turn to Deborah for her perspective, but in my experience, you're much more likely to get one thing if one thing is the only thing you're asking for. If you ask for too much, they're more likely to give you nothing because they can't deal with so much.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Take my side.
So I'm not saying that we won't
Okay.
apply for this money. We will
Okay.
still submit the application and have conversations about it with the people who do funding. We just won't put it on this,
Okay.
hey, this is our top priority list.
Gary.
I guess just to follow up on what Robin's brought up is, and we have been working on this for 2 years and working with that whole legislative component, the courts. So it's kind of more like a team effort and more likely to get funding, I guess. I know I don't like giving up the other either, but
We're not
trying to be
totally giving
realistic.
up. We're just not.
Not combining with
Yeah.
this. I got it.
Just as an FYI, there's another county that also had about the same amount of requests that we did, and I've been talking with them, and we may be working together to try and get something on this reimbursement of the extraordinary criminal justice costs. But our number one priority is for the impact fee funding.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So the second half of the list is shared legislative issues that the county will support moving forward. So those include funding for culvert fish passage replacement. So that's supporting a system-wide approach to correcting the fish blocking culverts, including funding for local governments, not just at the state level, but at the local government level. The next one is county financial sustainability and flexibility. So that's tying property tax revenue growth to inflation and population. And that provides counties with more flexibility.
Cut some changes on the language in there.
Yeah, we have a little bit changes working with Robin on that, changes on language in that to get rid of the new revenue to address mental health. That's TST. So
So you may recall that's related
Yeah.
to the House Bill 2006 that was proposed this past legislative session.
So we're working on that one a little bit more.
Okay.
Next is the state pays their fair share of elections. Currently, they only pay for elections held in odd years. This is to request that they pay for elections held in even years as well. It affects Thurston County by $600,000 to $800,000 and statewide 9.5 to 13 million. Prepaid postage on the mail-in ballots. Currently, there's just a grant for a single year of paying for the postage, the prepaid postage, so they're requesting that that funding is extended. Foundational Public Health Services funding, fully funding FPHS for all local health jurisdictions. And then the 2019-2021 transportation budget proposal, which is $4.5 million for NEPA and SEPA work, and that's along the I-5 corridor. And then the last one is funding for $4 million to complete the design and right-of-way acquisition for ramps at Kaiser Road and Yager Way for US 101.
Comments or questions?
that'll be in conjunction with the city of Olympia,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
the Olympia?
It's the West Olympia project. Yeah.
I got a couple questions.
Oh.
Go ahead, you go first.
Just for information, the county group that did the implementation of the salmon culverts did a presentation at the statewide county commissioners meeting last week. And I sat in on one of those, and there was an individual there from one of the funding groups that has to do with funding for salmon issues. And they were very impressed and said, make sure that you put into leverage your existing money because we think we can contribute. So I can't think of the name of the group right now, but easy enough to
Fish
find out.
Passage Barrier Board?
Yeah, that might have been it. I had too many acronyms and what going through my head there one time. So, anyway, the staff did a very good job giving the presentation of our commitment and what we have actually done versus a lot of jurisdictions that have talked about what they might do. So,
And I have two comments. Go ahead.
So just related to the Fish Passage presentation, that I also attended, that was the leadership conference last week in Tacoma. And through the, on the audience, which is representatives from counties across the state, they were very impressed as to how innovative Thurston County has been.
Yeah.
And really is innovative in changing the focus. That it doesn't have to be a transportation project to fix a fish barrier. Changing the focus is building the infrastructure to remove the barrier. And how innovative Thurston County has been in going through the permitting process, and how innovative Thurston County has been in partnering with the tribes as to how we can probably have the best result. So, and through the questions the staff had from other counties, it was pretty evident this is a model program across the state. So,
Can I jump on that? I was thrilled when I saw the program for last week's leadership conference to see that Thurston County was featured in three presentations at that statewide conference on what we've been doing, or what they've been doing, our public works, with the fish passage barrier removal. I was just very, very proud to see that. That's pretty cool.
kudos to the director. Thank you,
you're here.
Jennifer.
Yay. Thank you, Jennifer.
So actually, I have maybe three. So the first one, I want to go to the state paid fair share of all elections. It's sort of a critique, not in a rude way, but it's been on, and I'm not expecting any answers, but from there, because I think it needs to go more back to the auditor. It's been on there almost 4 years that I've been here, and I don't know if anything has been successfully done to help out with it. I'm not saying that against the auditor by no means, or anybody in the county. It's been there 4 years, and just my way of doing business is either do something or do something else, because it's not working in some sort of way. So I don't know if there's been an analysis or an examination to get this push to be able to get some level of success, more than what it has been in what I know of. I'm not saying take it off, but I'm not saying if they're not going to work, then don't go forward. It's kind of a hypocritical statement there, but I'm trying to make a point.
So from conversations with Mary, I understand that the Statewide Auditors Association has had in the past been somewhat fractured around the vehicle for this.
Oh, okay.
They have now come to an agreement. There's an agreement with the Secretary of State to get their backing on the bill. I'm not sure who the other stakeholders are in this, but it sounds like it's starting to come together better than it had been in prior years.
I'll take that, but I don't know if that gets us the 600,000 or 800,000.
Well,
That's a sliver in the right direction.
Right. It's about 10 million statewide that the board,
Oh,
the
I see that,
legislature
9.5.
need to commit. Yeah.
My only point is this: you keep the whole saying, you keep doing the same thing, the whole insanity thing clause and
Sure,
whatever. And
but
I don't want to
it's-
go insane on this. I want to try to make something
Right.
happen.
It's
out
also
of it.
not at all unusual for a bill to take 3 to 5 years to pass the legislature.
That's true.
Yeah.
5288 took 3 years, so I know that one. So okay, good. Well, just keep it as a note. So the other question, and I don't know who to direct it to, because I don't know if this is Deborah's, but shared legislative issues the county supports. I guess that's the key word there. Obviously, we're going to support fish passage. What are the other shared legislative issues? Because usually they're kind of itemized in the sense of Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, and county. And is there a sheet for that? And I guess that's what I'm missing.
Yeah, they
to show how, because there's funding for the $4 million right-of-way acquisition for the Kaiser Road Yager Way. Is that an Olympia thing more so than anything else?
That's an Olympia.
Okay, so, okay.
And to answer your question, we do have a shared legislative agenda. And the shared legislative agenda includes 3 items. One is the I-5 corridor.
Got it.
The other one is the funding for the Veterans Hub, remodel the building, close to $2 million.
Lacey's.
And then the other one is the regional training facility. The city of Olympus planned to do one with the other two cities. And the
Okay.
shared legislative agenda that you have before you is not just a shared legislative agenda that we have here in the county, is shared issues perhaps with others, including,
So
for
this
instance, the
others.
Yeah, other than just
Okay,
the
okay.
region, Thurston
Outside
County.
that,
Yeah.
what you just mentioned, okay.
So for instance, the Association of Counties, Foundational Public Health Services,
Mhm, I see
and
that.
the flexibility and sustainability for county revenue, those are on their legislative priorities for 2019.
Sure. And then, one more, are you able to, I know you're not, just the WASAC, their priority as far as indigent funding, are you able to speak to any of that by chance? I'm just,
I know that
Indigent
that's super important,
yeah, that's
Indigent
very
defense?
important. And
cost-wise.
I know that the Association of Counties has done a really good job of illustrating why the state needs to do more in terms of providing funding to Washington State. And they had actually produced a graph that showed where Washington State was in terms of other states that receive funding. And I think we're 40th on the list.
Yeah, ranked really low,
Very, very low.
out of 48.
And so that's something that I know that we've had conversations with legislators about that as well. And they really believe that that's something that they could really help the counties out with. So I know that there's going to be continued conversation. This is the graph.
Sure.
Continued conversation on that.
We're at the red.
Yes,
We're at the point where it's appalling.
Wow.
yeah. And that's really an area where the state has increased cost to the county, and they really need to be helping out. And I believe that they recognize that. And so last session was so short, and it was so crazy that a lot of the things just,
Yeah.
including like with the election costs, those things, they just didn't make it across the finish line because they ran out of time. But I fully expect that this one's going to be addressed next session.
Okay.
So with that as the backdrop, are the legislators still concerned that the counties may sue them, file a lawsuit?
I know that conversations are continuing on the WASAC's litigation strategy. I haven't heard any updates. I don't know if you heard any at the meeting last week.
It continues to move forward on that front. WASAC.
Well, I got it at a snail's pace, it seems, but that's just my time frame. It's probably moving quicker than I expect. Thank you.
Have a comment?
I don't know, we had an executive session up there, and I don't think I can comment on it, so. I don't think it's gonna happen tomorrow,
Okay.
Indigent defense?
yeah.
Oh.
But I do think.
Well, that's another one of those things
That's
I've
a
been
big
working.
concern that the counties have.
It's
Yeah.
moving forward.
It's,
All right,
yeah.
thank you.
One more question. It may seem really, I'm looking at you, but it could be anybody. Is there any room for discussion for the extra 5% of the extra 5 years for the courthouse financial package thing?
Yeah.
The thing that we tried last time?
We tried last year.
Yep.
This year, it didn't go, didn't move much of I think.
Is there any
We're wanting to
discussion,
do-
though? Any room for a discussion? Because that's a lot of money towards the courthouse that we can, I'll say, save or use in the right way. 5 years means a lot.
Yeah, it does.
I want my 30 years. I'm looking at you, but it don't have to be you. I'm just.
There have been some discussions this year about that, and I would say that the reception has not been positive in terms of going back and asking for an additional 5 years.
Okay, we'll change that. I got a plan.
They were too busy fixing my dog. Fixing Hearst. Yeah. This
Thank you.
session.
Thank you, Deborah. Anything else for Deborah? Anybody?
No, thank you very, very much.
So what, based on the comments that you receive and the feedback, I would like for you to approve the legislative agenda so we can finalize that and we can start distributing it as the legislative agenda from the county.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay.
I have no issues.
Thank you, Deborah.
I want them
Thank
all
you,
done
Megan.
and success, but that's what's the plan? That's what I want. Okay, let's move back up the agenda to the briefing, public hearing, decisions pending,
And this one is specifically related to the comprehensive plan and more so the mineral lands, parks, and preserves, which we had a briefing on November 1st. And it's a continued discussion and possibly some level of decision. So, as Director of CPED, Josh.
Can we bring,
Staff.
hey, Megan, can you bring the other microphone as well? Please?
Maya and Cindy. We have pictures. I love a map.
Well, thank you, sir.
Two things I want you to remember about me, whiteboard and maps.
Not soon forgotten.
All righty. So you want to give background, let Josh take over, and then we'll try
Let
to...
me, if you allow me to frame it and give you a little bit of the background before you get into the details of this particular map.
And I'm going to ask what a bluff is in a second,
Yep.
so okay.
So this is part of the docket of the 2017 scope of work that it was approved by the board to develop a map related to mineral lands. Through that process, the staff went through and hired a consultant to develop a map on the availability of mineral resources across the county. The next step staff took was taking, well, the already code that was in place, that was no part of the scope of work to change it, the code, and imposed those restrictions of the code into the map that was generated by the consultant. So within that process, the code includes a 1,000-foot setback from the UGAs as well as some other areas. It was early in the year that you extensively discussed with the staff the nuances of the 1,000-foot setback, and it was provided an options for the commissioners. At that time was 3 options. The first option was to approve a map that includes the 1,000-foot setback, and that was the recommendation provided by the Planning Commission. The second option was approve a map, moving forward with a map with a 1,000-foot setback, but with including recommendations of defining the definitions of parks and preserves, plus a policy decision in which you could, meaning the board, can allow additional activities within the 1,000-foot setback. And the third option was to direct the staff to go back and change the code by eliminating the 1,000-foot setback. In July 24th, the majority of the board provided direction to go with option number 2, which includes keeping the 1,000-foot setback, and ask staff to come back with some illustrations as to how the board can identify and define the parks and preserves. The policy decision is another step that the board needs to take later on, and that's not part of the conversation. So staff came to you with 2 options in terms of how the parks and preserves can be defined, which resulted in option number 1 that included 38 parks, and option number 2, which included 28 parks.
How many?
28.
28, thank you.
So the illustration before you includes the option number 1, option number 2, and the staff is going to walk you through that particular legend. Through this process, you have received some public testimony, all the way from the Nisqually Indian tribe, the Nisqually Trust Lands, and the Sierra Club, as well as in other citizens, which are encouraging the commissioners to, in addition to just have the parks and preserves, to include trust lands as well as preserves. Is that? interest. Land trust is, as well as in reservations of the Nisqually tribe to include within the 1,000-foot boundary. So the reason as to why you received the public testimony, because the option number 1 and option number 2 provided to you by staff doesn't take into consideration those lands as part of this map. So the map before you does not include the reserves in trust lands as they suggested. So, and that will be an additional decision point whether you'd like to entertain that or not. So I will let staff to walk you through this colorful map as to what that means. And I believe after that explanation it's going to make total sense.
So what's the bottom line up front for you sitting here before us trying to figure out what we want to do with this? What do we want to walk away with?
So
And then we'll go to the map.
the staff met with many stakeholders to define the outcome of this map, which is more parks or less parks. So the decision for today is, do you want to take the option 1, which is more parks, or option 2, which is less parks? And as we talked about previously, staff has met multiple times with an entire group of stakeholders interested in having many parks and or a lot of separation areas, and other stakeholders that would be interested in having no separation areas. And so what we've come up with, essentially what staff has come up with, is all of that input led to these 2 criteria, which none of the stakeholders were completely happy about. So knowing that staff has tried to find the middle ground, and that's the outcome here. So the question on the table is, what would the board like for staff to define the criteria of parks as? One criteria has more parks, the other criteria has less parks, and as the county manager stated further on, the next question will be what uses can be done within that 1,000-foot separation. But that's not the question on the table right now.
Question today is more what level number of parks versus. Hang on a second. So are you looking for a decision today?
We're looking for direction from the board.
A direction today. Okay.
Yep. And so, sorry to,
He needs to go through the map, then we'll go back to your question.
so the map, correct, thank you. So the orange is really where you want to,
Orange,
orange, red.
What do you call it?
butterscotch.
Well, so the butterscotch is the mineral lands inventoried. And then the orange is where that 1,000-foot separation overlaps with the buttercream,
The
butterscotch.
orange boundary,
Yep, those are the 1,000-foot separation areas.
buttercream, okay. I'm trying to get my colors straight.
And explain the green
Goldenrod?
and the blue.
Shut
And-
up.
The green and the blue.
Oh, yeah, I am. I can see the scutterbotch, right?
Scutterbot.
Reverse
Yeah,
that.
butterscotch. And so,
Wait,
what is,
well, wait, hang on. The buttercream and butterscotch are the same color?
I think that's correct, yeah.
Thank you, okay. I was looking for the third one. Got it.
and the orange
Thank you,
colored
Rachel.
boundary is mineral lands affected by 1,000-foot separation distance?
The
This is
inventory
an overlap.
and the 1,000-foot separation.
And the
exactly.
gray boundary lines?
Is the gray, the light gray is the city and UGA's, and then the dark gray is the area that's the 1,000-foot separation, but there's no mineral lands there inventoried.
And the blue,
And so if you look back at the key,
I'm looking at it.
option 1, green and blue, is more parks. Right below that is just green, that's less parks.
And what's the
Option
difference
2
in a green color and a blue color as far as parking?
is for parking.
Not parking, but parks.
Yeah, it's one, the option number 1
Not-
includes 38 parks.
Sure, nope, misunderstand. What,
Yeah.
green gets you a countied, or there's a distinct color for blue to make sure it's different than green?
Yep.
And what does that mean?
So there's a whole criteria, and we can run through that criteria, but the bottom line on the difference is that the blue takes into account undeveloped
Oh,
and
undeveloped,
active.
that's it. Mhm. That's what I was looking for, undeveloped, and green is developed.
Yeah,
Okay, we got the map out of the way unless anybody's got any questions.
no, that's good.
And land trusts are not included on this map,
Correct, so staff
correct or
used,
not?
correct, they are not included on this map.
Trust lands and reservation lands are not included in this map.
And
that's a-
reservation lands are not, are they considered, I'm sorry to cut you off, are they considered trust lands? They're not, are they?
Well, trust lands are held privately, and reservation lands is
Held
held by
privately.
the tribe.
Got it, okay.
specific.
And staff,
Big difference, big
oh,
difference.
sorry, go ahead.
Is this about the map? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's about the map, it's about the whole thing.
Well, we're gonna have a broader conversation. We wanna get the map out of the way first, that's all.
Right, so I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. So, we've got some letters here from environmental groups, some tribal comments. None of those are reflected on this map at this point in time, is that right?
Correct, and so I'll let staff dive into the details, but essentially, the charge of the staff was to use the information that we have. So we used the approved comprehensive plan language to define what parks are. And one of those definitions is government land that applies directly to what we have here. Land trusts are not government land, even though we may participate in funding of the purchasing and acquiring of those lands, we don't own them. The county provides money to many different projects that we don't necessarily own. So staff used our language very specifically to come up with this map. And it's important that we, as staff, continue to try and work directly with the language that we have on any of these items. And so we appreciate the comments on the land trust and adding those in, but our charge was very specific in the creation of this map.
However,
wanna-
it's within your purview whether
Thank
you'd
you.
like to add trust lands.
Definitely.
And
Okay.
reservation lands to the map.
That's where I want to go
Thank
with
you.
this. So, is it also within our purview, because you said earlier in the year, we voted to continue on with the 1,000 feet instead of
Right.
addressing that?
Right.
Okay, that was a 2-to-1 vote.
Yep,
my
yeah,
estimation.
that's what I said.
Okay.
Majority of the board, yeah.
Yes. So, if we're going to adjust the rules, if you will, of engagement, because we're continually getting more information fed in, is there anything that would prevent us from looking at everything in total, as now we've got more input over that whole period of time? And I'll just throw something out there to see if this is possible. Could we, say, entertain the tribal issues, the environmental communities issues, have a map that showed those particular locations, for an example, as brought forward to us now, and say, instead of 1,000 foot, go to 200 feet, and include everything in that map, revisit the vote that we took earlier about the 1,000 foot, because the rules of engagement are changing. And I mean, I don't even know if that's where I'm at. I'm just using that as an example. Could we move forward and give direction based on that if,
So you're looking for-
if the board agreed to do that?
I'm looking for an all-encompassing map versus just the parks.
Well, I'm looking at addressing the other concerns that have been brought forward. I can't envision that at 1,000 feet, because I think that is too restrictive. I haven't seen the scenario that I agree with, that the 1,000 foot is actually a necessary benefit, especially when you're talking about boundary lines being artificial designators. So a road or a railroad or a property line, maybe that doesn't do any good for protecting a piece of property. I don't know. I'm just saying, could we entertain, I'm going to make it just a blanket deal, bring everybody's concerns to the table, take the 1,000 foot, change it to 200, let's see what that looks like, and see if that's feasible.
There's a lot going on there, though, but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, Romero?
Unfortunately, administratively, you cannot change the 1,000
1,000 foot.
foot to 200 feet.
Well, when you say unfortunately we cannot,
The-
without
let-
maybe
let-
certain
let me-
criteria
yeah,
being
no,
followed?
No, let me follow up with that.
Okay.
Because you need to, that will be, you need to include on the new scope of work when you approve the comp plan amendments for 2019. Because that is not part of the scope of work that you approve or the board approve to look and changing that portion of the code. So, and that's what I'm saying, at this point, you administratively, you cannot just go ahead and, so just
Okay, what would
changing
it
that.
take to address that?
What it will take, it will be for the board to put idle on this, table this, and bring the whole item of the code amendments next year when the board approves the new scope of work for its staff for 2019 and 2020.
Okay. I mean,
I'm just
is
giving the
that-
options.
Is that such a bad
No,
option?
no. I'm not saying bad, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just laying out the options that you have, if that is the direction of the board.
Okay, let's go to Hutch.
What we're deciding today, right now anyway, is option 1 or 2, which defines the difference between 10 parts as to whether they're included or excluded, correct?
Correct.
And then we don't, that's where we are at, that crossroads right now. And then the next step would be to discuss what can be done within that 1 foot or 1,000 foot barrier.
As a policy decision.
Separation.
Yeah.
Right, so it could be fewer than 1,000 foot setback depending on special circumstances
Yeah,
and such, right?
specific activities.
Okay, so that flexibility still remains whether I vote to include 10 parts or 10 fewer parts,
Yes.
right? Okay, and that's what we're here to decide is option 1 or 2, 38 parts versus 28.
Yes.
And when would that next puzzle come into play?
So that'll align with our planning commission. So we'll take this definition of the parks, whatever is guided, and then the next step is to present options on what can be done within those 1,000-foot separation areas. And so that'll start to marry up with the presentations to the planning commission, so within the next couple of months.
Next few months, okay,
Yep.
so within 7 months anyway.
Yeah, well, and so to Commissioner Edwards' question, the answer is yes, we can revisit all of those things that you like, but staff is working to complete 2 different directives from the Board of County Commissioners. One is address these issues specifically, but also complete the comprehensive plan.
That
in
was
a-
the second part of my question.
in a
was the
timely
comp
manner.
plan. Yeah, where we are.
And so taking that time to do the idle will impact the second goal that the commissioners have directed us to accomplish.
But I guess I would argue that very seldom do we complete all of our comprehensive plan activities that we planned for on that particular day that we decided we're going to move forward on 5, on 7, whatever it is. We don't usually get those all completed anyway. So what difference does it make if we complete this one or not at this point in time, if that's what it's going to take, if we need to revisit it? What does it matter that we didn't get this one specific thing done, even though we had intended to get it done?
Did you have something to add?
If you have a comment, you go first, but I will.
Okay, my only comment is we did disengage already the mineral lands conversation to even get to this point from the comprehensive plan. Our attempt now is to remarry them back together. If you'd like to consider continuing that disengagement for whatever purpose, we can consider that as well. We are in the process of working to accomplish the goals that the commissioners set in front of us. So if you have a different direction, we'll accept that information.
So from a financial perspective, what difference does it make if we now don't complete our comprehensive plan? The difference is, compared to prior years, that we have a greater risk now of losing state and federal money, because it's been noted that we are not necessarily in compliance with state law, and state agencies could begin to withhold our funds. So we have millions of dollars at risk now if we don't get the comprehensive plan done.
Aren't we out of compliance in many areas of planning?
The answer is no. We're not out of, the words out of compliance. We worked directly with the Department of Commerce
Oh,
to
right.
strike those words. We are behind the
Okay.
deadline. We are
Yes.
missed deadlines.
Missed deadline.
But for the
Okay.
record, we are not out of
Oh,
compliance.
okay, good enough.
We worked really hard at that.
We are at risk, though.
Okay.
Indeed, totally.
We may be at risk, but we have not completed everything in the timeline that has been laid out for us. And one of the requirements oftentimes, and I believe we reached this settlement with Commerce, was that as long as we were moving towards a solution and a completion, that we were okay. The whole idea is that we just don't disregard what growth management is telling us to do. So in my estimation, we've got brand new dated input from tribal entities that we're supposed to recognize. We're supposed to recognize environmental groups when they bring things to our attention. So I think that we would not be exposing ourselves to that much more litigation, if you will, because we are attempting to meet the spirit of the Growth Management Act, which take into consideration all parties and see if we can't come up with a solution. And if that means delaying it, I don't think that's going to hurt us any. If somebody appealed and we had to go to the Growth Management Board, I think we would prevail.
Okay, hang on a second. He has a question.
I agree with the good faith, if we're showing good faith effort moving towards completion, that we would be hard pressed to be found out of compliance, not out of compliance, what did you say?
Out of compliance would be the thing.
But did this board vote already for the 1,000 foot?
That is
We did.
correct.
Yes.
How long ago?
July 26, 2018.
In almost 6 months.
Yeah.
And so if we were to go back and say, well, we're going to put it on hold because we maybe want less than that or fewer than 1,000 feet, I don't think that shows good faith. I think that means we're going back in time again and starting all over again. And I think it'd be easy to show that we're not acting in good faith.
So I guess what I'm hearing is, and just to perhaps verbalize Commissioner Edwards' request, is really whether the board would like to revisit the decision that you made back in July 26, 2018, to delay this part of the update of the comprehensive plan and include the revisions of the code to revisit the 1,000-foot setback in the code and the upcoming scope of work for staff that will be approved in 2019.
Can you give the history of the 1,000-foot?
Ready?
Yeah, Maya. Yeah, Maya.
I don't think Maya was here when that happened.
One of
I
us.
definitely wasn't.
Just speak a little louder, that's all.
So initially, there was a 1,000-foot separation distance from urban growth areas when we first adopted our designation criteria for mineral resource lands. And in the last update, 2003, I believe, we added a 1,000-foot separation distance from public parks and preserves. And the process to get to that was we had a focus group of mineral land industry stakeholders and also environmental groups that participated in that discussion. And some folks felt that that should be a lesser distance. Other folks felt that that should be a greater distance. And that was kind of the middle ground number that was settled on for public parks and
The
preserves.
1,000-foot was?
Correct.
And what was the extreme portion of that number? Or, I mean,
I don't
was
have
it-
an exact value.
Was it like 100, 2,000 feet or 3,000 feet?
So again, since we weren't in those discussions, it's hard to give an exact number, but I presume that the discussion ranged from, on one side, let's have up to about 5,000 foot separation. On the other side was have no separation at all. But again, that's not the agreed upon what came out of that discussion. Even if in that stakeholder group, not everybody felt satisfied with the 1,000-foot separation, that's what was adjudicated, and that's what's in our current legislative guidance, ordinance and guide regulations. Sorry.
I hate to make decisions based on I don't know, or we don't know. Is there any chance, I see there's industry people here, or there's environmental people here, could we at least ask what their read was? What was it? Was it 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 100 feet?
You wanna
Sir, help
revisit that?
me understand which part we're making a decision on. I don't know.
No, I'm the one making the decision.
Okay.
And I'm hearing that, well, we don't know exactly what the discussion was about, you know, the maximum, minimum. But I've got environmental people here and industry people here in the audience. I'm just asking, can we ask them? Maybe they remember that span of most extreme to least extreme.
Going back 15 years?
Yeah, apparently they were all here.
But with all due respect, that's not going to change the 1,000-foot setback that is in the code.
How come?
It's not going to change because that is codified. And I guess what
Well, we
you
might have to have another hearing and go
so
back.
what do you and again that's what I guess that's what you're requesting to the board is to engage again on the code amendment to revisit the 1,000-foot setback, and then all the different groups will have again the opportunity to go
So
through
the
that
the
process.
history, the way I brought it up is, the history is this is the so-called compromise at 1,000 foot. Based on a number that could have been 5,000 or another one could have been 0, at least 1,000 was a compromise at that given time.
The outcome of that discussion, yep. And it was, help me Cindy, on there was a legal challenge of some kind?
Commissioner Edwards, you mentioned that we do have a list of comprehensive plan amendments that we do every year. We have a docket. This is slightly different in that this is our overall update. At the time we set the docket, we wanted to update certain chapters. One of those happened to be the mineral lands because it went to a court case about creating the map. What the court said is, okay, you don't have to do it right now, but when you update your comp plan next time, you do have to update your map, which is what we're trying to do here. That's why this is rolled into the overall comp plan update and isn't like an individual one like we might typically have in other years.
Great. That helps me understand why we're doing what we're doing. It doesn't match with some of the other things that we've done. So, okay.
So you're advocating to put more onto the map?
Well, no, I was trying to take into consideration those folks that have a concern, different groups, at the same time, try to mitigate the whole thing and try to come up with something that just makes sense for everybody. Kind of, we want to protect the environment. But we don't want industry
Which
to
groups are you,
succeed.
the tribes, what was the other ones you listed?
Well, we have a letter here from a couple environmental groups. We've got the land trusts, the Nisqually tribe.
But all of those letters that you receive is advocating maintaining the 1,000-foot setback and adding additional lands to the
And
setback.
adding additional lands.
Yeah,
That's
but
what
but I believe
right.
you would like to see the board to reconsider the 1,000-foot setback as part of the code. Is that correct?
If we were to consider all of these, yes.
So
that's what-
I'm just
that's
trying
what
to
I'd like
trying
do.
to narrow down as to, based on your perspective, if you like the board to reconsider the 1,000-foot setback as a result to amend the code.
Yeah, but now with what Cindy has told me, I'm not sure that's the right thing either, because I didn't know we were, when you say a court case, was that court case a Thurston County court case or another jurisdiction?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was Thurston County. It was through the Growth Hearings Board making the decision on the update. I guess a suggestion is that we're trying to kind of wrap up the overall comp plan update. That doesn't mean that at some point in the future you could go back and look at that one piece again,
That one piece being what?
the 1,000 feet.
Oh, sure.
So that's a possibility.
Okay, let me get this straight then. Is it possible that we can move forward with this map, doing what we're doing, and at a future date, come back and review it? Is that what I'm hearing? And make a change if we deem that change necessary? Is
There's
that
wiggle
right?
room already built within if you go forward.
Because the next step is, what we were talking about was, once we decide on 10 parks either way, is the next discussion in process with Planning Commission.
Yeah.
It's part B of the
What to
question.
do within that 1,000-foot. Are there exemptions where people can still mine within that 1,000-foot setback? Which
That's
would be
where you wanna
0,
go.
50, 250,
That's the-
900 feet.
That's the second step
That's the second tier.
on the option that you approve on July.
But we can't get there until we decide on option 1 or 2.
Yeah, you want green and blue or just green? That's what the question is today. Then we can talk about within that 1,000 foot that you're asking for.
Well, at some future date, is it possible that we could review blue or green even? I mean,
Well, they're looking for guidance
My
today.
initial response is just for trying not to be too restrictive, is that I'd go with the 28 rather than the 38.
That's a great
you know.
question.
But then we get a park that's developed, one of these undeveloped ones that gets developed, then we need to go back and readjust it, is that?
Can you show him the 10 parks in blue that's on the map? Can you walk him through them real quick?
Sure. You have the big map? We have a big map.
Okay.
It's important.
Yeah,
It
totally.
is really important,
Yeah.
so just give it a second and let him see the 10 parks.
Certainly.
Because I can't find the 10th park myself, so I counted
Well,
out 9.
and so it's 10 parks, but then remember that it's the parks that are most affected are the ones that have an
I'll have to
overlap
hold
with the
that.
buttercream, the
So
inventoried
how about so we can
mineral lands.
see the camera?
So 10 parks, Elbow Lake, Lake Lawrence, Ruth Prairie, Rainier View,
That's 4,
Deschutes River Park,
5,
McAllister
6,
Springs, Woodland Creek,
7,
Cooper Point
8,
Park,
9,
Athletic Fields,
and 10.
and Louisa.
Okay, that,
Only 5 of those parks actually have mineral lands within their 1,000.
they
foot.
touch buttercream.
Right, this
Only
orange area.
5. Wow.
The other 5 are in the white.
Right, so you'll see this park up here.
No
Griffin
mineral
Athletic
land.
Fields, no overlap with mineral lands either way.
Whatsoever.
Did you start off down here, Maya, with Deschutes Falls?
Deschutes Falls is green, that would be an either option.
It's an either option.
Correct.
Oh,
Because it's developed
It's
now.
developed now.
okay, okay.
So you're really only talking about 5 parks in some ways for mineral land. Focus.
Let me see if I can get an answer
Specific.
for this about the maps. If we based it on the map about where the mineral lands were, that's the only place that an individual would be able to take gravel off of their property, because we're mainly talking about gravel, is that right? Gravel.
Mainly gravel.
Gravel. Okay. My concern is, we paid $150,000 for a map from a consultant to show us where the gravel is. And just looking at it with, because I happen to be old enough to know a lot of these parcels of property, I can tell you the map isn't right. And we've had a section of ground out here since the turn of the century.
So
And it's not right. Yet you can't dig in the ground that's marked as gravel and find any gravel. You can't even find rocks where you dig in. I'll just use my garden as an example. You can't find any rocks in it, but yet that map says it's a gravel area. And I can tell you, I've dug all the way through it, done a lot of work. It goes down about 6 feet, then it comes to hard pan. And I guess if you ground the hard pan up, there must be gravel in there somewhere with a lot of clay. But, so I don't put a lot of credence in the fact that the map is even right, let alone how we can address policy if we're starting off, we've got a $150,000 map that's not right. How important is it that it be pretty exact? I mean, I'm not gonna do any gravel mining, and I don't even own that property anymore. So, but I just know from the property that the map isn't right. So,
How accurate is the map?
yeah, that's
Good
kind
for
of what I'm
illustration
looking for.
purposes only.
I will
Yeah.
say that this buttercream that you see here
Uh-huh.
takes into consideration our current designation criteria. So we used the original inventory map that was conducted by the consultant,
Uh-huh.
and then we overlaid our designation criteria. So there are already some parts removed based off of what is currently in the comprehensive plan. For example, parcels smaller than 5 acres are pulled out of here. As far as areas that are mapped as mineral lands that don't actually have mineral lands, the best geologic data that the consultant had access to was used for that map. So.
Does a citizen have any recourse if this map is wrong and they want to do something on their property?
Let's say I own a parcel off Stedman Road, and my parcel's bigger than 5 acres. I
Okay.
have gravel there, and I want to open a commercial mine, but it's not mapped here. I could either submit a comprehensive plan amendment outside of the 8-year update cycle, Or at the 8-year update cycle, I could submit to the county boring samples that says, there's minerals on my property. Please include me on your map. So we will update this on an 8-year cycle.
But that can only be done every 8 years? I mean, so the
No.
citizen
No,
has
every
to-
year.
No, the citizen could initiate outside of
At the
that
3rd,
8-year
5th, 7th year, or something like that.
cycle. But the county will update this
Right,
regularly on an 8-year cycle.
no matter what.
Just, but it-
My
it's
my
gonna
arm is
cost,
hard. Anything else on the map?
it's gonna cost somebody a lot of money probably to go through that process.
Well, it's going to cost a lot of money no matter what, because whomever wants to mine on this, they have to go through a permitting process outside of the county.
And is that with DNR and
The Department of
the
Natural
county?
Resources, and the Natural Resources, they have to go through the reclamation process and everything like that. So they cost a lot of money. Is somebody who has the opportunity to mine their property, they have to go through a business decision whether that investment is viable for a revenue.
Right, but I mean, I'm trying to take the Growth Management Act into consideration here, urban growth areas. How far do we have to truck product as society continues to grow? I don't think it makes sense to have to truck product 30 miles if we can truck product 7 miles. That's part of my consideration.
And I appreciate that, and you know, I can probably give you my personal perspective in terms of a road project that requires gravel, because when we bid those specific materials within the road construction, it's up to the contractor to determine where they get the gravel. So we don't dictate whether they have to get it from this area or not.
But the taxpayer's got to pay that bid amount, and if it's going to have to be trucked.
But that's a competitive process. For
Well,
instance,
sure.
Lakeside may have a gravel area. They can probably use that type, and they may have an advantage versus others. But
Okay, so I have a question for Gary. Are you prepared to go one way or the other on the green and blue and green question, and then come back at a later date to discuss that about the 1,000-foot or less than or more than of that, so that we can get to that has some wiggle room on each one of those? So with
I
parks
guess-
or without parks?
I guess if I'm being asked right now, if it's 28 or 38, I'm going to have to go with 28.
Okay.
And the map that
But
reflects 28.
I wanna make sure-
I don't think that covers everybody's concern, which I am concerned about.
Is there a date later in the future? In the future, is a discussion about the 1,000-foot of what could happen in between that 1,000-foot per site?
yeah, good question, and maybe you can walk us through the timing or the time in which, if the commissions make a decision, option 1, option 2 today, when the 1,000-foot setback can be brought back to the commissioners to make a decision, and how long it will take to address that.
So-
Because I want to make sure that we
Yeah,
give
good.
a realistic expectations in terms of the timing.
So I'm going to start real quick with our piece of it and then hand it over to Cindy for the Planning Commission part. Staff has already developed the options for the uses. Once we have the decision on more parks or less parks, staff has a few options that we think meet the guidelines of least restrictive to most restrictive, providing all of those different concepts of what can be done within that 1,000-foot
Is
separation.
there just one generic example that you can give of what maybe an option is? You don't have, just an example.
And
We provided
yeah.
an example early in the year. For instance, when a parcel, let's say 6 acres, which is about the 5 acres, if a portion of that parcel is within the 1,000-foot setback, so let me draw this for you.
I think I recall you doing a whiteboard on this before.
Yeah. If this is, let's say, this is the UGA, right?
Yep.
And this is the 1,000-foot setback.
Okay,
If a parcel is right here,
yeah,
under this, without any policy decisions, this will be excluded for mining. But you could probably say, if a portion of this parcel is here, we can allow mineral lands.
Right,
Okay.
write it into, you could write it, grandfather it in, so to speak.
okay.
So those are an example. as you
Okay,
asked.
let me, don't go away from the board here just for a second. Would that same thing possibly apply to a property in close proximity to one of the protected areas, could that same thing apply?
That will be up to your purview.
So you're saying
Yes.
it could apply
You-
if we
you-
wrote it
you-
that way? Or?
You could decide that. You could decide whether some areas that may have, are within that, they are closer to a park. Is that what you're
But
asking?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
You
My
can
question-
probably,
Unprotected area.
yeah, that's part of the policy decision that you could make.
But that's a question and answer session for next time we have this. Right now, we got to get through
Yes,
green and blue.
but even what you just drew on there is yet to be determined, is that right?
It is yet for the board to decide.
Right, but I mean, staff's gonna make some presentations, and we're gonna say,
Right.
yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Right.
For that parcel, for that geographical area, for that UGA or that park, it could be. And that could be different than the one over here that's right next to
It could be.
something else
It could
that's
be.
a problem.
Yeah, and that's the flexibility that you have by implementing policy.
And then, so in terms of timing, specifically in terms of timing, so if we are to receive direction on more parks or less parks, the next steps, we're in the process of we have those options on the uses within the 1,000-foot separation. We need to make sure that those are aligned with our other codes and ordinances, that we're not stepping on other regulation that we have.
You
And
don't
we
break
can,
your own laws.
exactly, and we can bring that fully vetted to you as an introduction at the very beginning of the year.
So are you prepared for a green and blue or green vote or guidance?
Well, I'm gonna go for the 28 now, just because I'm still in limbo, kinda
Okay.
where
And I
we're
wanna-
at. If we can come back and revisit everything at a later date, it doesn't matter that I go with.
Well, they need some guidance. That's what they need. Okay.
So-
And I would like to
Are you
wrap up
prepared
the,
for a-
Prepared, yeah.
Okay, which way would you, or you?
I'm option one,
What is
38 parts, because it's two additional parts, 10 rather additional parts. It's environmental, with understanding that tribal land and land trusts are excluded as a part. I understand that. And knowing that we can go back on a case-by-case basis and get within 1,000 feet if we want to or need to. So I'm okay with that.
Wait,
Do you have to follow with that?
Yes, could I have clarification on that? You stated get within 1,000 feet. Do you mean up to that 1,000-foot buffer, or do you mean
Within,
less?
with it less.
Somewhere less
That
than
example,
1,000.
that example, I think that's what he meant, that
So-
example.
So it could go
The individual
999.
policy could allow that activity to take place even within that
Right.
1,000-foot
Not
area.
now, until we decide on.
We got to get to step
one or two.
one to get to 2 and 3, what you're asking for.
You're saying that we possibly could dig in there, is that what I'm hearing?
From 999 to 0 is a discussion for later.
And that will be something later on as to what activities you would like to allow it under a policy decision within the 1,000
And this is going to be a very good policy.
regardless what the 1,000 setbacks is. And here, on the red, is all the 1,000 feet back, the overlaps with the
Lots
available
of those.
mineral lands. So there's a lot of opportunities
Right.
for the
Right now, we
board to
just need to
determine
get
that.
parks out of the way. So
Okay,
you're going to go with green?
I would go with the 28. to
Okay, you've
start
got the
with.
28.
That's-
You're a 38? Okay, so it comes down to me, right? So I've done my numbers, and I just want to walk through just for a second for clarification, because for industry purposes, I think 28 is a way to go. However, when I look at the numbers of the number of parks, 10, 5 are not even applicable, and of the 5 that remain applicable, only 3, the one up there in Lacey, and I don't know the numbers, the one off of Vale Road, the 2 that are the small bottom, really have a large amount of buttercream, if you will, for conversation, mineral lands. So it's only 3 that are directly applicable, whereas the other 2 are kind of not. So I guess the long way I'm going is it's 38 for me also, because we only have 2 tiny parks, and the one in Lacey is directly applicable. But that doesn't mean that the discussion of the 1,000-foot in between that needs to happen to the level degree that we can come to a compromise that makes both the industry and the environment be able to move forward and be prosperous in both avenues. But that discussion's got to happen even with my 38 vote of
Understood.
38. So.
So understood, so option one, the majority of the board
Or option one, yeah.
has voted to move forward, so that's a direction to staff. I would like to bring another decision point for you, and this is a result of the public testimony and written comments that you've received from the Nisqually tribe as well as other individuals. to include trust lands and reservation lands. And that is, I would like to hear your direction from that as well.
The date?
Because that is going to influence the map.
Another map.
Well, it will, so from this map, from the option 1 that you just voted, so if you decide to include trust lands and reservation lands, there will be other dots added to this.
I want to see those dots first before.
Yeah, I
I
do too. I want to make that
Yeah,
decision.
so my decision was based
To
on
become
those
that.
not being included.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of pieces to that.
I want to see those dots.
It's not government owned. We talked about that.
Got all that.
The land trust mapping and the different properties change constantly. And so whatever map we create is going to be out of date within weeks of its creation.
Good point.
So, I mean, we could take our time to go down that path, but it's not going to be relevant very long.
Okay, well, I'm not prepared to take a vote on that today, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Okay, but I would like to have a little more discussion on it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Could, at some point down the road, as we maybe reevaluate, we put together policy about what is applicable activity, or appropriate activity, I guess, within a certain distance. At that point, we could probably also address those issues that you just brought out,
Yeah.
trust or tribal. In policy, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so, yes. So let me
Recap it.
recap.
There you go.
So what I'm hearing is the majority of the board has decided to move forward with option number 1. And that includes let me just read it for the record, areas of designated mineral lands of 142,605 acres, which includes 38 parks. And also, the board has decided not to take a formal vote on the request to include trust lands and reservation lands.
On to further
That-
discussion.
that
Well,
no-
I think that's not a fair
no,
statement.
that-
I
it's a-
think
it's a-
without,
no statement, meaning you
without
will,
additional
you will,
information.
you will delay taking the vote on those requests later.
Okay.
Well, they might, but I already said my vote is predicated on those not being included.
Okay, so, but I hear the other two commissioners would like to
No.
delay that
Okay, I'm not
decision.
voting yet. But you know where I stand.
Okay? So the trust lands and the reservation lands is a delayed decision.
For another conversation.
Okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
What else?
I just want to make sure that, for the record, we've got the timing right on the introduction of the use, the policy use. So I said we would be able to introduce it to the board in January, but then it goes through the planning commission discussion, so it won't actually come to the board for a decision after that until probably April, May, like we said, a few months. So just want to make sure that that's clear, that we'll start talking about it in January, but we won't get there until spring.
How does this play into our completion in consideration with what Cindy Wilson said? How does that work? I mean, yeah, I mean, the comprehensive plan and all that. How does this tie in?
Accelerate it, delay it, hold it up, what?
Making a decision moves it forward faster so that we can become in compliance. So making these decisions is very helpful for us to move forward. Once we get this section, we can move forward with other chapters also.
Okay, so we got this one.
So
On
thank you,
time,
commissioners.
Well, we still have more, right?
Thank you.
More to
Thank
come.
you.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. All righty. So I'm still on the overall agenda, and I'm going to jump past, or move past PIO and go to commissioner items. And I'm going to look to see Public Works, Lake St. Clair, City Annexation, Letter Constituents. So I think 3 of them are Public Works. So why don't we try with Public Works and knock those 3 out and then come back to the others that are applicable. Is that all right? Cool. So the first one is Public Works winter preparation. That's informational, and there's letters from the constituents, and there's a Public Works piece there too. So.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I got another map.
Oh, I love maps. And you got an arrow in the middle of this one. It's a yellow arrow.
Thank you, Jennifer.
That's great. Okay. So a little bit of background and tell us what the map is about and then what we're looking for. What's the bottom line up front?
Yes, Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. And we are going to give you, it's just informational, but it's to let you know the efforts that we have already taken and what we will continue to do as we prepare for the winter season that is upon us. And so this is Lucy Mills, our Road Operations Division Manager. And so she's going to walk you through at just a high level what we've already started and then how we respond to
Just take 10
events.
seconds and describe the colors of the map.
Absolutely.
Mhm. And what they mean. What
I
we're
gave
looking
all
at.
the maps away.
You need one?
Can you read that?
So basically, what you have in front of you is the road department has divided the county into 5 response areas. Each one is denoted in a different color. And within that area, we've developed priority and secondary routes that, for response purposes of especially de-icing, snow plowing, and sanding. So that is what you're seeing on this map here.
Sure.
The red is the primary routes, the green is the secondary routes. The pink is tandem routes. If we get a large event, we'll put 2 snow plows on those routes. And then the bold green line is actually our anti-icing routes.
Okay.
So we divided those up based off of bullpens and where they're located,
Oh, the
so quick
bullpens.
response.
Okay, sure. Makes sense now. Alrighty, got that out of the way. So,
Okay, our road operations, our preparations actually begin in September, early in the year. We work with the ER&R fleet, and we go through all of our equipment to make sure that it's working properly. We will order materials such as sand and salt to make our brine with. And we will also have our staff run through the snowplow routes to see if there's any changes or additions that need to be made. For snow and ice response, as I stated, we divided into 5 areas. Each area has a bullpen in that area, and at each bullpen we will stockpile materials such as sand, salt, brine, and we will also stage equipment such as dump trucks with sanders and plows, anti-icing vehicles that can apply and respond quickly out of those individual areas. For the capability of the brine, each bullpen or quadrant has 2,500 gallons of anti-icing material. We try to apply that anti-icing material before an event. We monitor various weather outlets so we can be better prepared at when we know we have to apply that before a freezing event or especially before a snow event to help prevent bonding of the snow to the roadway for easier removal. For flooding events, we also prepare by we coordinate with the ECC and provide filled sandbags.
the ECC is what?
The Emergency Coordination Center.
Sure, for the viewing audience, that's all. Sure.
We will work with them and local fire districts to provide filled sandbags so that citizens can respond to those areas and pick up sandbags in case of flooding. We will also monitor the river levels and various local roadways so that if flooding does occur, we will post signs on those roads. And if the road actually ends up with having 6 or more inches at center line, we'll actually close the roads. We know that that is a big impact on the traveling public, but just 6 inches of water can stall and actually float a small car. Efforts are underway to develop projects to reduce or eliminate flooding on county roads. For example, in 2016, Public Works replaced an undersized culvert on Tilley Road Southwest. Usually that area would flood 2 to 3 times a year and we'd have to close the road for an extended period of time each event. Since we replaced that culvert, we have not had to close that road at all. So that was a great help to the traveling public. We're also doing a study in the Independence Road area where the Chehalis River floods Independence Road between Michigan Hill and James Road. So we're hoping that with that study we can come up with a solution so we don't have to close that road 2 or 3 times a year as well. We've also installed additional culverts on Mima Gate this summer to hopefully alleviate some flooding in that area as well. Winter preparation also includes how we communicate with the citizens. And so we have developed, like I said, several things. We have our snow plow routes that the citizens can view on the Public Works website. There's also a location on our website where they can view travel impacts to county roads such as water over the roadways or roadways that are closed due to downed trees. And we've also developed proactively some messages that we can send out on Twitter that we're calling Help Us Help You. And we'll send those out pre-event so that citizens know what's coming and steps that they can take to help themselves.
Any comments or questions so far? You like the colors?
I'm curious, how come you use liquid anti-icer on some routes instead of sand or whatever else you use? What makes the determination there?
So it depends on what the actual event is. If it's really damp, then salt brine gets diluted, and so we don't use that. We'll go out and apply sand if it freezes. If it's dry, then we'll proactively go out and apply the salt brine or the anti-icing solution to help prevent the freeze from ever happening. We can also go out and apply that before a large snow event, so it helps prevent the bonding of the snow to the roadway, and it's easier to remove.
I like the fact that you have the communication plan included. And my question is, though, because it goes on the county website or the Public Works website and Twitter, does it go on Facebook? And does it also, do you get PSAs to radio and TV?
Don't answer that. Add the whole thing with the emergency management notification system they have also. Do you have that in addition to what he's asking?
We're not tied in with the emergency management notification system at this point. We do put notices on Facebook, but that's the limit, I believe, is that we do at this point.
Well, we are coordinating with the county manager
Okay.
as we are heading into certainly a weekend where we're not staffed and we have people at the ready. There's planning that Lucy and her supervisors and crew chiefs do in looking at various different news sites to determine what the potential weather is going to look like, to plan what our response is going to be in advance, so we're not figuring that out as the weather hits us.
For example, we may be in for some wind this weekend.
Yeah.
And so we're getting ready to send out notice tomorrow through Twitter and Facebook so that citizens know that you may see some wind, and if it's too high, you may not see staff out there until the wind dies down a little bit for the safety of our employees.
Or your power is restored. That's why I'm asking about, radio and TV. The PSA is getting that word out as well.
Anything?
Thank you.
And also, this response, I use to that information because they're eyes and ears on any particular event when I consider closing or delaying opening of the courthouse. So by 5 o'clock, really, I get some great information from Lucy and Jennifer, and that gives me an indication as to what the magnitude of a particular event is that may warrant delaying or closing the courthouse.
So at 4:30 in the morning, Lucy and I are having a conversation.
Oh, wow.
To then be able to
Because
pass that information on.
I need to make a decision by 5 o'clock.
Sure.
Yeah.
And yeah.
In order to take care of the 6 o'clock movement.
Right, to avoid people coming in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. 4:30.
I know, that's what I'm like. Some people want really bad weather. They were talking about that at the county leaders conference so they can test it out, and I'm thinking, oh no, I don't want that. But anyways, we just wanted to be able to share with you what our efforts are as we move into this and answer any questions.
Yeah, this is the time to do it, yeah. One last thing?
I hope we have a mild winter.
Me too.
NOAA is predicting a little warmer than usual with an average rainfall.
Right, yeah.
All righty.
Okay, thank
Thank you so much for your information.
Thank you.
Thank you, good job.
All righty, so that takes us into either Capital Land Trust or Lake St. Clair? Let's just go with Capital Land Trust.
Yeah, the Capital Land Trust, Commissioners, you may recall the Conservation Futures funded a purchasing of the Nelson Ranch Conservation Easement. And we have received some information. The negotiations continue on. However, they have received some delays. And the request before you is whether you would like to authorize a 12-month extension on the Nelson Ranch to finalize the negotiations.
All right.
And Andrew's here to give you additional feedback.
What do you got, Cindy or Andrew or Josh?
So Andrew DeFobis, Community Planning and Economic Development. Thanks, Ramiro. It's a great introduction. Essentially, this is the last Conservation Futures project that we currently have outstanding. They have asked for a 12-month extension to complete the project. Currently, Capital Land Trust is working with the landowners to actually define the area on the property where the easement will be placed and to finalize those conservation easement documents. So I provided a copy of the extension request letter and also a letter of support that was provided, or an email of support from Jill Nelson of Nelson Ranch. And then also a draft extension letter for your consideration. So that's the gist of it. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Yep, Gary.
And this originally was approved by a previous board, I guess, right?
That's correct, in 2014.
In 2014. Is that money already set aside and is never, that we've not been figuring that in on any of our gopher holdback business or anything, right?
It is on.
It's kind of waiting in the winds.
Yep.
I hope we're sweeping the interest on it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
We'll
yes, you are.
add it to next year, but yes, that money is specifically earmarked
Okay.
for this project. And I think we even pushed it forward into next year because we knew it would not be spent this year.
It seems like we've had another extension on this one earlier or something. I remember something being talked about.
Yeah, there was an extension last year as
Okay,
well.
I mean, I'm fine with it. It's something that Capital Land Trust wants to move forward with, just not right now.
They are moving forward. It's just,
There's a
this has
delay.
been a pretty
There's a delay.
complicated
Okay.
project as far as I
I
understand.
mean, is there any reason, I guess I'd ask the county manager, any reason that we wouldn't?
No, I'd recommend for you to consider the extension.
My question is, if these go 4 or 5 years with extensions, why is it that complicated? And is this typical of this type of event, that it gets put off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
We're getting toward the larger, the longer end of your average conservation futures project, but it's not unheard of for a project to take 4 to 5 years. It just depends on the complexity of it. I know that the first extension, they were waiting for the timing of their matching funds to come in. They hadn't gotten their other funds to be able to complete the project. It took a while to work out whether, what areas were going to be in the easement, which ones were not. Did the Nelsons want to retain development rights on parts of the property or not? And now I think a lot of that information has been settled. There's an appraisal that's been done, so really they're trying to figure out, where does that easement land and completing those documents. As far as I understand, there's a good working relationship between Capital Land Trust and the Nelsons, and they've indicated their support for the project as well. So
So this was extended to December 19?
correct. Right.
Okay.
Do we have any possibility for mitigation benefits on the prairie business?
Not at this time, no. This site has not been determined to be occupied, and that's a pretty big setback. If it's not an occupied site, doesn't have gophers on it or any other species in the HCP, we may be hard pressed to get mitigation credits off of that property. In addition, there's a question of whether the other funding source, the WWRP money from the state, would allow their money to go toward a property that is going to be used for mitigation.
Well, I realize we're not allowed to use a federal source or a state source, I guess at this point in time. I don't know. I guess we haven't had finalization of the HCP yet. But even so, is there any possibility that we would get a percentage of, okay, we contributed half towards 100 acres, so do we get a possibility of 50-acre benefit or something. That's what I'm wondering.
Back to it not being listed. So back to it not being listed.
Well, there are no species present that would enable generation of those credits.
Yeah, but aren't there other, besides gophers, it's prairie property, and aren't we trying to protect meadowlark and
Right.
frog? And
It would depend on whether the species were present, is my understanding. And so, for all the properties that we have utilized conservation futures for, you know, we're keeping an eye on whether there would be future potential for mitigation credits. It would potentially need to come from any future uplift we could do with these properties.
Could you, to the commissioner's point, could you look into that?
Sure.
I mean, I guess we're trying to, it's not just the Mazama pocket gopher. It's my understanding we're doing 12 species that, there's a term for it, that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's a term that's been put in place. Anybody got it on the tip of their tongue?
Species?
No, there's some other term they put out there with, including.
The guilds?
Huh?
Guild?
Guilds, that's what it is.
There it is.
Gills.
Yeah.
There you go.
To meet those kind of future guild requirements, I mean, I can't imagine that if the meadowlark is one of the species that we're looking at, and we're gonna set aside 400 acres with the Nelson Ranch, for an example, and it's all nice prairie habitat, it's Mima Mounds, prairie habitat, all that. I mean, I can't believe there isn't some meadowlarks that are gonna live there.
We can definitely look into it. I think in a broad sense, on any of these properties that we're protecting, whether with conservation futures or not, you're setting something aside that could potentially serve as habitat in the future. It's a question of how do you get there, and you know, how do you get those species there. But if it's not going to be developed, then the potential remains.
Well,
Okay,
I mean, the butterfly
gotta
and the
move on.
meadowlark has gotta be there. I mean, I don't.
So do you have any issues with the extension?
No, I have no issues with
Okay.
the extension.
So we got 3 votes for the extension.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We will look into the mitigation question a little further.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm gonna move to Lake St. Clair. St. Clair.
Yeah, they have that copy. You can have that. And Commissioners, this is a follow-up to the conversation that you had maybe a couple of weeks ago with Commissioner Edwards. Would like to investigate the possibility to change the speed limit at Lake St. Clair.
No?
Elevation
Elevation of the water.
elevation, they eventually change allows the
Activities. Allow the
activities within the speed
Okay.
limit. So, thank you. And as a result of that conversation, you requested staff to go back and do a little bit of analysis if any other lakes have an issue on the water levels of the lake. So staff has done that very brief feedback and check-in, and Josh will walk you through the results of that conversation. And in your packet is included this. Yep. Just to follow suit.
Here we go. Got it.
Okay.
Single letter,
Single letter.
Okay?
front and back.
All righty, go ahead.
Okay, so what you have there is an email of me reaching out to different staff that's connected with the lakes here at the county. So we reached out to Tim Wilson, who is the lakes manager?
Lakes
For
and
public-
Weeds Manager.
Lakes and Weeds Manager for Public Works. And then Ryan Langen, who is the current interim Water Resources Manager in CPED. They worked with their staff and folks reaching out to the different citizens who manage or are kind of the executive directors of those lakes, the citizens that live on the lakes. And you can see there's a chart of what the response was back. And the question was very specifically from the board, inquire about citizen reports of water levels being an issue of any kind for residents and/or operators of county lakes that allow motorized recreation over 5 miles per hour. And so that was the specific question that Tim posed to the different people of these representatives of these lakes. And so you can see there on Long Lake, the response back was some seasonal issues with high water fast boats. Lake Lawrence, the response was no high water issues. Summit Lake, the response was no high water issues. Black Lake was contacted with no response yet.
Oh, I remember this, yeah.
Lake St. Clair was contacted but did not receive a response, but staff has received in the past reports of high water and fast boats being an issue. And then we did not have a contact and could not find anyone from Hicks Lake, Pattison Lake, or Ward Lake, but it was suggested that we reach out to Deputy Jay Swanson in the Sheriff's Office to try and find a good contact that could provide us some information. So yet have received that further information. But that's what we have at this point on that question.
Okay. I would still like to proceed with addressing that 4-inch difference on Lake St. Clair.
What would you like to do with it?
I'd like to have a public hearing, because I guess that's going to be one of the requirements.
Yeah, you need to set a public hearing.
So then we can make a determination at what level we can put it at. I'm opting, I mean, my initial response is to go back the 4 inches.
Okay, we're for a public hearing, so.
Okay, well, staff will prepare an AIS to set the public hearing, and we'll start working on the ordinance addressing the water, the 4-inch variation on
I
that.
hope you don't have to dig too far, because it's all in the books, you know, I mean.
Okay,
I don't think we have to reinvent anything.
I usually don't, Commissioner.
Okay.
All right, what else? We're gonna- yeah. Anything on St. Clair more? Are you done with that? Sure. Gonna move to proposed City of Lacey annexation informational.
Yeah, also attached in your packet is the latest request for the annexation from the City of Lacey. And and this has a starts with this letter, and also they have some maps, and also here in pink, and the last part is the request annexation. And also on the first page is all the comments the staff has already provided to the City of Lacey related to this particular annexation, since the deadline to provide comments was last week. Anyways, in the map that you have before you, and I will ask probably Deborah to join us on the table, because this is really timely. Related to the proposed legislation the City of Lacey is trying to push through the legislative session next year, related specifically to annexation. So, Josh, can you walk us through in terms of this particular annexation and go from there?
I'll do my best. So you've got there in the map in front of you is the annexation area, and I think in your packet you can see there that it includes the rack and the area surrounding the rack.
Yeah.
The
Mushroom farm.
does it include the mushroom farm as well on that
Yeah,
map?
across the
Includes that.
street from the rack.
I don't have a map in front of me, sorry.
It does. And the
I think there's about 40 acres in there.
and the fields across from that are used to be baseball fields that are now cleared out behind the school.
Well, and so our staff's consideration of this, we had this run through our current planning and our community planning. And as you can see in the letter, our perspective is that the irregular boundaries proposed in this annexation do not take in some of the residential areas that we think should be included. And it leads to the question of whether or not the annexation process that the city's engaging in is creating islands. And so we have more work to do in making sure that we've got all of our input from all of the different groups. But we want to make sure to be ahead of the curve and communicating to the City of Lacey our concerns, which we have done. And I have had conversations with my counterpart at the city, Rick Walk, on these discussions, and we are engaging in that process. But to the larger question of the legislation, I would leave that to Deborah.
So, if I may, you may recall in the 2018 legislative session, the City of Lacey introduced a piece of legislation that the county opposed, where they wanted to deal with all the what they call islands as part of the annexation, where they wanted to, the legislation included foregoing the 45 comment period the citizens could have and providing their opinion whether they'd like to belong or not in a city. And also that piece of legislation included dissolving the boundary review board. That legislation didn't go through, obviously. However, this is coming back up again, and Deborah has been proactive in making sure that our position continues to be heard and continues to be the same. So if I may take you attention to this map, particularly, if you see the pink in this area.
Oh, the pink one, sure. Okay. I can see it, yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, so the pink area is the city of Lacey's boundaries. And the gray area is the UGA, right? So, and we highlighted a couple of annexations that occurred just to illustrate at least my concern. The black is the area where Costco is currently at, and they annexed that after that was developed. There is a lot of potential to be developed in this area, and that's how they go through the process to annex that. There is a potential to come and have a major annexation on Marvin Road to take all the commercial areas that we developed already. So the concern, and this is just the concern from the staff, is systematically they're creating islands. And I have been very vocal with Scott Spence as to what our concern is. Because the Thurston Place and Tango Wild, those two areas, are not addressed in any particular annexations. Those forever be islands in the county. And the city of Lacey will never annex those areas. So as you can see, systematically, they start creating that island by itself. And that is the concern that we have with the piece of legislation Deborah is helping us to work with. There is a meeting next Tuesday with Representative Dolio, where she's very interested in hearing the county's position on the proposed legislation by the city of Lacey. Unfortunately, we have Board of County Commissioners as well as 5 public hearings that day. So Deborah and I are going to be working as to what will be the best strategy to present that to Representative Dolio.
How many years ago was Costco annexed about? Do you know?
You have that date, right?
Yeah. So let's see here. It's 8/8/4, 1990.
Oh, quite some time ago.
Yeah. That place has been, Costco's been there forever.
Yeah.
That used to be the state of Washington's property.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The game department had it even before that.
So this is just informational for you.
So on the 26th, 27th, what can we do to help influence the conversation?
There you go.
So I haven't seen the proposed legislation yet, but I have been told that it's going to be the same piece of legislation that was introduced in 2018. And there were 2 bills actually, a House bill and a Senate bill. The House bill, actually, they made some changes. And so they ended up being different bills at the end of the 2018 session. But initially starting out, as Romero said, it removed review by the Boundary Review Board for annexations of these unincorporated islands. And then it also removed the referendum piece of the statute for residents that lived in that area to express their thoughts on being annexed. The testimony that was given on these bills was the city of Lacey talking about Capital City Golf Course. So it wasn't addressing these kinds of concerns. And so what I will be doing is I will be sharing your concerns that, number one, remove the referendum piece of that. And then as I mentioned, there was a change made to the House version, and in the House version, they did put back in review of the Boundary Review Board, but not in the Senate version. So I'm assuming that the legislation that we're going to see for 2019, which could be pre-filed, and we'll start seeing those bills.
Could be what?
Pre-filed.
Pre-filed, yeah.
So we would start seeing those bills December 1st.
Yeah.
That it would keep in the provision of the Boundary Review Board, but it would remove the referendum piece of that. I think that we need to have some discussions with legislators about not allowing annexations to occur that create these islands. and having a bigger discussion. There's also going to be a House local government workshop on annexations during House Committee Days, I believe December 4th. So Paul Jewell from Wasac, Robin and I went and met with him earlier this month and talked with him about this. And so he, of course, as a former county commissioner, is well versed on some county issues on this. He's going to be making statements to the committee on this issue also.
I guess the other piece too is that our staff will draft, when we see the legislation, we'll work to draft language that Deborah could use as part of how we'd like to have our staff not have the islands be made within the annexation. So we'll be partnering with Deborah on that question.
I would like to see this board take a very adamant position that we're definitely not in favor of these type of island annexations and refer to the Growth Management Act. I think under the Growth Management Act, the whole intent was that those entities like Lacey that take the revenue, so they're taking all the cream and leaving the county with all the problems. And if you want to talk about environmental protection, the intent of growth management is that these municipal areas be hooked up to sewer systems eventually. And so I think by not hooking them up to sewer systems, we'll never truly be protecting the environment the way it was intended. I'm not saying on-site septic systems don't work, but that's that's kind of what the growth management legislation is all about, and the taxing authority given to the cities versus the counties. We'll never have a tax base that'll allow us to provide municipal services at the rate we're going right now. So they're going to become a ghetto if we allow this to happen at some point. And I think the legislatures would be very receptive to
Do you want to go with Paul Jewell and say that?
Yes, I certainly do want to go to Paul Jewell and say that.
Not go to and go with him.
Go with him, yes. I know Paul Jewell. I believe his concern would reflect that.
And I believe it will be plenty of opportunity for the board to see the actual proposed legislation, both in the Senate and the House, as the legislative session begins. And then I will bring those to the board and Deborah and as well as Jennifer to see the determine next steps. So this is just FYI for now, just to keep you aware.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Deborah.
The
Josh, thank you.
This is just the perfect example of what
Right
we
there.
were talking about.
That's very telling.
And if I might add, I think it's intentional that this wasn't ever discussed. They've known about this for quite a period of time. So when they talked about the golf course over on the Elm Highway as their example, this is really what they were shooting for.
Right. And again, I think systematically you're going to left those developed residential areas out.
Oh, yeah, obvious. It's obvious in
Oh, yeah.
this. Look at that.
All righty. Going to move on to the other item. Thank you very much, Deborah.
And another example, that Safeway store on the Elm Highway, right across the street from that golf course area, was something that we developed and then they annexed.
That's exactly
Yep.
right.
So,
Yeah, so you have to wonder what they're planning for this area, like maybe a
they got a
convention
plan.
center.
They got a plan.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they do.
So,
Thank you.
with the beard or without the beard?
Soon without.
soon without.
Letters from constituents?
Yeah, and this is more informational for you, not necessarily an action. You receive, first of all, you receive a letter in November 8, 2018 from a lady named Yukiko Stave, and she is currently a panel attorney who provides services indigent defense. So she works with Patrick's office. So she makes a series of statements in here, and as a lawyer, of course, writes a lengthy correspondence where she is asking the Board of County Commissioners to intervene in the Office of Public Defense so Patrick can give her more cases.
Oh.
So when I read that letter, I said, well, that's no, that will not be something the commissioners would like to get in.
No, we're not doing that.
So I have asked Patrick to develop a response, which he has, and is attached here for you, not necessarily for you to review. No, please don't.
You want us to review it?
No,
right
no,
now?
please don't review. It's just informational. So just to make you aware that you received the letter, and Patrick, after today, I'm going to go ahead and tell him to respond on behalf of the board, and hopefully that will address the concerns of that letter.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
All righty. That's it?
So the other letter is a letter that goes back to June 15, and this is a letter from Mr. Lyle Tribbett, and he's making a request from the board back in June 15, 2018. They're asking for some improvements on the Kingham Street Southeast in Martin Way, which is in the Tunger Wall area, asking for sidewalks and asking also for street lighting. So we follow up with that response back to Mr. Tribbett, and this is a response from Public Works that although the recommendations for improvements are well warranted, but it didn't match the overall strategy, so it's not included on the TIP Transportation Improvement Program. And however, staff was going to work to put some lighting on some of the locations that Mr. Tribbett requested. So just happens that we receive, the office, the Board of County Commissioners receive similar letter, exactly the same letter on October 31st, 2018, asking the same recommendations. And I believe also Mr. Tribbett contacted Robin specifically to ask if this project has been added to the TIP, which it has not, and that was a recommendation by the department.
So actually what Mr. Tribbett asked was, had the board seen this in their budget review process and what your determination on that was? At that time, I was unaware of the prior correspondence and connection with Public Works, and I told him if he would please make sure I had information about his project, I would ensure that you had an opportunity to consider that as part of your budget. So that's what led to you seeing it today.
Are you looking for some comments, or what are you?
No, what my proposal is that I already drafted a response letter to Mr. Tribbett. Now this letter's come from me, and it's stating that we will be working on putting some lighting on some of the areas that he has requested. The sidewalk project is not included in the TIP. However, next year will be up for reconsideration again.
I would.
Go ahead.
You pointed that, okay, well, anyway, but you guaranteed, or you ensured that the board would see this in your letter. I would like to validate that the board, you brought it to the board, we
They've
discussed
seen
it.
it, right.
Yes,
I
thank
will
you to
address
validate,
that,
Robin.
And I think that it's absolutely appropriate, if it doesn't rise to the top
Yeah.
of the priority, that it not be funded.
Right.
And your, the recommendations of Public Works should stand. But as a constituent, he had a right to ask that you see
Yeah.
something.
Sure.
And
Yep.
I made sure you did that.
Go ahead.
I would like to see you include in that letter basically what we've just talked about this annexation business, and the proposal by Lacey that they're trying to get out of their, I don't know if you want to call it their responsibility, but under growth and refer to growth management, that the whole intent was that this eventually would become municipal area. It's within the urban growth management area. That's the intent of it. I don't know if you want to lay blame or not, or point out to them that Lacey is trying to circumvent that responsibility at this point in time, and you might want to contact your legislators, because this is not within the intent of growth management that these communities be left high and dry, because we will never have the resources to address it.
First reaction to your comment, my suggestion will be not to include that, because it may appear that we want to punt the decision-making process to the city of Lacey as to why they have not annexed this. And because if Lacey hasn't annexed, then that's why they don't receive the sidewalks. And because the request is specific about sidewalks, which is a county
Theoretically,
county
but
area.
we don't have the resources to do
And,
it.
and that's what is stated in here,
yeah.
but adding the annexation component to this is meaning, well, if you want those sidewalks, then you need to argue the annexation.
Yeah, I want him to annex.
And or
No.
go to your legislator.
You don't want him to
That's
annex
not
it?
No.
That's not my intent. I'm just questioning the relevance of that statement and the response letter to the citizen.
So we include the-
Stay focused on
Okay,
it.
you do whatever.
Can we include the
How about
approximate
that?
cost of such improvements?
We don't know yet.
I mean, not even an approximate?
No, and,
Okay.
and that will be extremely difficult to come up with.
Actually, according to Mr. Tribbett, someone told him
Oh.
an approximate cost of what the project
So
would be.
he has it, then never
so
mind.
So
he's-
I will
yeah,
not be
Yeah.
putting in that
No.
letter,
Yeah,
that estimate,
no.
because
Fine.
that is a binding number.
yeah, don't.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, that's all, just to make you aware.
Okay, let's go to PIO then. PIO. Jump to the mic.
We're working on remedying this situation, by the way. That's what that is.
Omni mic.
Just a couple brief updates for you. The final open house for the Courthouse and Civic Center project is this coming Monday, November 26th, from 6 to 7:30 at the Westwood Baptist Church at 333 Kaiser Road Southwest.
Say that day and time again.
It is Monday, November 26th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Westwood Baptist Church, which is at 333 Kaiser Road Southwest, Olympia.
Okay.
It's actually kitty corner to the Harrison West property. Attendees at this one will see the layout concepts for each of the 3 sites. There's 2 concepts for Plum, 2 concepts for Harrison, and 5 for Hilltop. This is a much more interactive session than the ones that were held in October, because attendees will be able to go around, look at the boards, and provide their opinions on the different design concepts for the sites. We recorded a session earlier this month and are preparing it to put out on our website along with a survey. All information about this project is available at www.thurstoncountywa.gov. We also held a Citizens Advisory Committee meeting last Wednesday where they participated in the going through, providing their feedback on the boards. It was a good interactive session. And then last Thursday, I attended the WASAC Leadership Conference for the Communications Track Day. It was very enlightening, and I just want to give a shout out to Thurston County, the board. Thank you for supporting us, because there are many counties where communications is not supported, and it was very evident in the discussions with the other counties. I'll go a little bit more into this tomorrow morning when we do our PIO annual update. But thank you very much for supporting communications, because it's very important, and it was very enlightening to hear the feedback from the other counties.
Thanks for communicating.
Yeah, very cool.
Thank you for communicating.
WASAC is working with a company called Spry, and they are kind of doing a communications overview for WASAC. And as part of that contract, they are providing 1 hour to all of the counties to meet with Spry and do a small audit of communications activities. So I'll be setting that up, and we'll be meeting with them hopefully soon to go over what we can do to better our communications for our 2019-2020 communications plan. And then last Friday, we had the Hazardous Weather Task Force meeting where the group went over the communications plan line by line. They provided very good feedback. I'll be making updates to the communications plan and hopefully finalizing it at the next meeting.
Was Olympia there?
Yes, multiple Olympia representatives were there. Any questions on my activities?
Oh, you're great.
Okay.
Good morning, Brian
No,
Dominique.
good afternoon.
Oh, that's right. Correction, good afternoon. Brian Dominique, Public Information Officer for the Board of Commissioners. Last week, I worked with HR on a couple different projects. There is an IT director position out on the street right now. We created a new, the board created a new IT department, and they're actively hiring for that position. So I've been working with IT. We're gonna do some social media outreach, put some stuff on the website, and try to get some good candidates for that. I'm also working on a HR recruitment video. This is just a general recruitment video to get people to look at the county as a place of work. We're looking at why Thurston County is a great place to be, a great place to work, how we serve our community. I've completed phase 1 and phase 2 of that. We're moving into phase 3 now with the anticipated release date of January. Next tomorrow, I'll be providing the PIO annual update to you. This will take a look at our 2018 communications plan, all the activities we completed within that, some of the successes we have, and some of the lessons we learned throughout that process. That information will be used to create baselines for us to measure our communication activities in 2019 and 2020. And then just a quick social media update. We are at 4,561 likes on Facebook, 1,025 on Instagram, 103 on YouTube, and 4,942 on Twitter. I'll go into a little bit more detail on what those numbers mean tomorrow.
What did you do yesterday morning? I was wondering.
Oh, thank you. So yesterday, we went out and we, with Commissioner Hutchings, we created an episode on neonatal abstinence syndrome. This is babies who are born with no fault of their own, obviously, with an addiction to opioids.
Hey, it was great. Very moving. Very, very good.
Yes, we spoke with
Discussion.
we spoke with Liz Davis from Public Health, along with Gretchen Toller, and then we also went over to Providence St. Peter's and spoke with some of the nursing staff that work in the special care nursery. So that episode will be coming out December 5th is the anticipated release, but it will be within that week. But that's
And we met can we mention his name even?
Oh, you're talking about Cooper?
Oh, you
Yeah,
did it?
yeah,
Okay.
we can mention Cooper. We have a release for him.
I don't want to violate HIPAA, but yeah, we met little Cooper, 3 weeks old.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a great time. I'm really looking forward to seeing the episode.
Thank you.
Anything for public? No. All right. Anything else?
Go Cougs.
You didn't say it loud
Sorry,
enough.
Cooper, what was that?
Go Cougs.
Okay. What? Roll Tide. Okay, so that's PIO. We're going to run through the advisory board commissioners real quick.
We have La Bonita Bolmar, clerk of the board. We have one new application from Robbie Rutledge for the Agritourism Committee Board. Mr. Rutledge has been working with that board and Michael Cordier, the staff person, for quite some time. Mr. Cordier does support his appointment if the Board of County Commissioners so decide. And there's only one vacancy. There's no special requirements of that vacancy. It's not district specific, commissioner district specific.
And he's been participating to some degree?
He has. They've been working with him on various projects for quite some time.
Which one are you talking about, Robbie or Robert Barnes?
No, Robbie.
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 Rutledge.
Robbie, yeah. With Rutledge Farms.
Oh, he's good.
Yeah, he's a good egg.
He's very good.
Go
We're good
ahead.
on that. On Robbie,
Okay.
on Robbie Rutledge.
Thank you. The other application that we've been working with for the Board of Equalization is Robert Barnes. I have not received any communication, no response from him whatsoever in the last several months.
Okay. And we don't have any other ones, right?
No, we do not.
Okay.
You have not received anything, but we've been reaching out?
Yes,
Yes.
Ruth Elder, the staff person, has reached out to him. Commissioner Edwards has reached out a few times, 2 or 3 times.
So I'm wondering if he's really interested.
Well,
Yeah.
let's just, we
We're still alive.
won't worry about it. We won't appoint him, I don't think.
No.
Okay.
Those are the only 2 active applications that I have.
How about the reappointment?
Oh, the
there?
reappointment. Thank you. Neil McClanahan has been on the Housing Authority for Thurston County Board since 2002. He would like to be reappointed.
I'd vote for that.
You know Neil?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. All right, that's all that the clerk has for you
All right.
today.
Oh,
Well, wait.
I thought we had something coming up on the planning commission, opening or something.
I do not have anything as of yet. I will check with them and bring that to you next week.
I thought there was a opening coming up in December, which is just real quick. I thought you told us that.
Well, there are
a couple
some
of months
openings,
ago.
but I will bring all those December openings to you next week, if you'd like,
Okay.
because there's quite a few from various,
Okay, good enough.
and Robin had something.
Has Carrie contacted you about the upcoming vacancies on treatment sales tax?
She has contacted me, and I talked to her in the hallway yesterday. I haven't had a chance to read her email.
Okay.
All righty.
How many?
I can't remember if it's 2 or 3.
Ooh.
Do you have a 10-second commissioner item?
No. I
No,
mean, I have lots
I
of
do not.
commissioner items, but I don't have any that are 10 seconds.
All right. Thank you very much. We are done for the agenda.
Thank you.